Before I all will call this meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee of January.
Here.
Thank you all for joining us. We have six notes here. The first time on our business is going to be the introduction of the speakers. Carol, if you would do a roll call, that would be helpful.
Cheryl, did you hear that? Could you do a roll call?
This is Debbie. I was going to do the roll call, but I didn't understand a word he said.
You close the microphone, is it any better?
Nope, it's still muffled. Would you like me to do the roll call, or Cheryl, do you want to do it?
Debbie, if you could please do it.
Okay. David Bailey? Is David Bailey there?
I don't see him.
Ricardo Fernandez?
I'm here.
Floyd Brindle?
Yes, I'm here.
Vivian Handy? Vivian Handy? Stephen Holenkamp? Nicole Rice?
Here.
Alexis Babak?
Hi, I'm here.
I hope I pronounced that right.
It's actually Bobak.
Thank you. Christine Acosta?
Here.
Lucida Walker? It's Letitia Walker. Miss Walker? Artie Fryer?
Here.
Bill Roberts is there. Edward Merzowski? I'm sorry?
I'm here.
Right. Okay. Don Skelton?
Here.
Jeff Lucas?
Here.
Cliff Reese?
Here.
Camilla Soto? Is Camilla there? Camilla Soto?
I have one on my side.
Terrence Trott? Terrence Trott? Amy Espinosa?
Here.
Rick Richmond?
Here.
And is Barbara Kennedy
Here.
Gibson here?
Here.
Okay, I'm going to go through this real quick. I'm showing David Bailey not present. I'm also showing Vivian Handy not present. Camilla Soto is not present. We have a quorum.
Can I just mention that in the chat, Vivian Handy says she's here, but appears that we couldn't hear her when her name was called. So can we make sure that the record reflects that she is in attendance?
Yes, sir. So I have David Bailey and Camilla Soto is not present at this point.
Hello,
Do we
this
have
is
an
Vivian.
Oh, I'm sorry, Letitia Walker.
Terrence Trott, I think, wasn't here either.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Okay, yep, that's 4. David Bailey, Letitia Walker, Camilla Soto, and Terrence Trott. I don't know if they're in the chat at this point, but.
Do we have an in-person quorum?
Yes.
By my count, there are 7 people in the room, but Bill Roberts, can you confirm that?
Yes, we have 7 people here in the room.
Then we have a physical quorum present and we can proceed with the agenda.
Okay. If we're finished with the roll call, the next item is the public comment. Do we have anybody wishing to make public comment?
Hold on just a minute, please.
Morning.
I don't see any hands raised from members of the public.
Going once? Anybody from the public? We have a new member joining us here first. Check your microphone and see if we can hear you. Testing. David.
Good morning, David.
David.
Bailey's here now.
Okay. Rich, I'm assuming that there was no public comment on something, correct?
I don't see any hands being raised.
Okay. We will close the public comment portion of the meeting. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from the November 18th meeting. Minutes were circulated in the packet. Are there any comments or corrections to the minutes? Mr. Fernandez, you recognize.
I think I just heard myself being recognized, Bill. Is that true?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. It's not so much a correction. I just want to make sure that I'm clear on the understanding. And this is really to Rich. On the portion of the minutes related to unfinished business, I think it's page 4 on my printout. You make reference to our at-large seat for a person under 30. And the implication of the last sentence is that you were going to get a list of the top 3 candidates after you had input from the whole membership. I did not personally receive anything about 3 candidates. I think you made some reference to the top candidate, but I didn't see anything for the second and third ranked candidate. Was there some misunderstanding there on my part?
No, I think what I asked people to do was to rank their top 3 candidates. And I did receive a number of rankings from various committee members.
Okay, and do we have a listing of the top 3?
I can provide that. What I put in the agenda package was the application from the top ranked candidate.
Right, I understand that. Okay, I just want to make sure I understood what the minutes, what I thought what is communicating to me. All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions about the minutes? Hearing none and seeing no hands raised, is there a motion to approve the minutes? A motion to approve. David Bailey made a motion. Do we have a second?
I'm sorry, this is Debbie. You're going to have to state your name. I cannot hear you.
David Bailey
David, you made a motion?
made a motion.
He moved approval of the minutes.
David Bailey made a motion to approve. I think Steve Hollicamp did second. Steve Hollicamp made a second. Any other discussion? All the, Carol and Debbie, will you do a roll call vote, please?
Bill Roberts,
Yes.
Ricardo Fernandez,
I'm sorry, yes.
Stephen Hollencamp,
Yes.
Boyd Prindle,
Yes.
Don Skelton Jr.,
Yes.
Barbara Kennedy Gibson,
Yes.
Amy Espinosa,
Yes.
Christine Acosta,
Yes.
Vivian Handy,
Yes.
Artie Fryer,
Yes.
Edward Merjitsky,
Yes.
David Bailey,
Yes.
Jeff Lucas,
Yes.
Cliff Reese,
Yes.
Camilla Soto, Terrence Trott, Nicole Rice,
Yes.
Rick Richmond,
Yes.
Letitia Walker, and Alexis Boback.
Yes.
Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 yeses, no nos, and 2 not present. Yeah, 2.
Thank you. The motion passes. The minutes of our deliberation are approved. The next item on our agenda is the election of officers. Rich, do you want to shepherd us through this?
Okay, sure. So we have 3 positions that are officers, chairman, vice chairman, and officer at large. That's sort of the line of succession, if you will. So the chairman runs the meeting, the vice chairman in his absence, and then if both of those individuals are not present, the officer at large runs the meeting. So the way this normally works is I will ask for nominations, for example, for chair, and anybody can nominate anyone else. There's no second needed. You can nominate yourself if you'd like. So just, and then I will ask for members to signify their approval of the nomination. In other words, you're voting for the nomination. The first person to get a majority of those present is elected to the office. So that's the procedure that we normally follow. Are there any questions?
Yeah.
I have a
so
nomin-
Rich- Hey, Rich,
I have a
so
nomin-
I do have a question, Rich. So there can be multiple nominations before there's a vote. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. Just wanted to be sure.
I have a nomination.
Okay, I'm opening nominations for chairman first. Is this for chairman, Rick?
Yeah, this is Rick Fernandez nominating Bill to be our chair.
Okay, I hear a nomination for Bill Roberts as chair. Are there any other nominations? So hearing no other nominations for chair, I'm going to close that nomination. And there's, at that point, since there's only one nominee, we don't even really need to have a vote on that. The chairman would be elected by acclamation, if that's acceptable. Okay, any questions? All right, seeing there no objections, then Bill Roberts, you are elected by acclamation. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Here's the top lady. Thank you.
If I may make a remark, Mr. Clarendon, I just want to say, Bill, even though it's not a fiercely competitive role, I personally am just very grateful for your leadership, and especially as a new person on this committee, you've been very helpful to me to learn the ropes, and I just wanted to say thank you, and thank you for your commitment for our year coming up.
Thank you for those kind comments. Rich?
Okay, okay, I see one hand up, Rick Fernandez.
It's Rich. First of all, Bill, I want to echo that last comment as your backup quarterback here for the last, whatever it's been, 2 or 3 years. It's been a pleasure. I think I've only been called in off the bench once. So, you've made the job as vice president or vice whatever I am very easy. I appreciate it. I do have a point of order that I'd like to raise, Mr. Clarendon, Rich, regarding my position. I was appointed to this committee by Les Miller, who's no longer with us via his retirement. So I'm curious, do I still have a place on this committee in his absence? I would like to continue serving as vice chair and hope to secure a nomination from someone, but I'm not sure what my tenure here is anymore.
Yeah, it's a great question. And the answer is that you can continue to serve until you're replaced by the new commissioner who took Commissioner Miller's place. So I guess that's up to you then to decide whether you want to seek the nomination for vice chair, Rick. If it happens that you are replaced, then we'd need to elect another vice chair.
Okay, well, that's weird. Well, yeah, I would like to continue serving, but I'll leave it to the group. If I don't secure a nomination, I'll step off.
I would like to nominate.
I didn't hear that, Nikki.
I would like to nominate Rick Fernandez to continue to serve.
I'll second it.
And also to find a position, because we have multiple seats, different seats available in case we can continue to serve on the board.
Rich, this is Debbie. Could you please announce when they're doing who is doing the motions? I'm not hearing very well here for some reason in that room.
Okay. Well,
I could hear Nicole, I could hear Nikki nominate, but I could not hear her remarks after that.
And then there was a second also.
Oh, there was.
Cliff seconded.
So may I just clarify, no seconds are needed for nominations.
Okay.
I heard Nicole Rice nominate Rick Fernandez as vice chair. I didn't hear what you said after that, Nicole.
I said also what additional seats are open or positions are open currently that Rick could possibly move into if we continue to keep him serving on the board.
Okay, I think I heard you ask what vacant seats are there? Yeah, there's a seat for a business representative. Lou Prida stepped down. And then we have the seat for a person under 30. Those are 2 open seats right now.
Okay.
We'll get into attendance, so there may be another vacancy after we discuss that, but I don't want to prejudge that. So that's all I can offer at this point. Are there any other nominations for vice chair?
Yeah, this is Ed. I'd like to nominate, I'm glad to see Terrence Trott just signed on, and I'd like to nominate Terrence Trott.
Oh.
Okay.
Hey, good morning. Sorry for my tardiness.
Okay.
Little audio issue this morning.
Very good. So I have 2 nominees for vice chair, Rick Fernandez and Terrence Trott, nominated by Ed Majewski. Are there any other nominees for vice chair? Okay. If there are no, then I'm going to close nominations for vice chair. And I think what I would propose is that we do this simply by indicating if you are voting for a nominee. I'm not going to ask people to vote against nominees, but like I said, the first person to get a majority of yes votes is elected. Does that make sense to people? Okay, so
Rich, I believe we have 17 people in attendance. Still accurate, Debbie?
right.
Well, we have 18 now, Terrence Trotson.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, that's right.
Okay. So when your name is called, when we go through the roll, when your name is called, just indicate by saying yes if you're voting for the nominee. So if we can have a roll call.
Rich,
Okay.
this is Barbara. Is there a discussion on possibly having Terrence go into this role if Rick is going to maybe switch positions to, I mean, this becomes kind of this game of moving Rick around if Terrence is going to go into it.
I'm not sure I understand your question, Barbara.
Well, if Rick in 3 months is going to not be appointed by the county commission and we move him to like a business person, Luprita's seat, then Terrence could go in today as the, I'm not sure. Is there a reason? I just would hate for Rick to serve for 3 months and then him be not appointed again from the county commission. Am I misunderstanding this? I'm sorry, you guys.
This is Artie Fryer. I want to tack on to that because I'm perceiving the question is if Rick would still continue serving, then I presume he could continue in his position as long as he's still on the board. Is that correct?
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, if he were to switch positions, in other words, let's say he filled some other seat, see any reason why he could not continue to serve in the role of vice chair if he was elected.
And that's the question. So what are you saying, Rich? He could continue to serve as vice chair?
If he were appointed to another seat, not a county commission appointed seat, then in my view, he could continue to serve as an officer.
All right.
I think we should move forward with the vote because we're kind of crossing bridges before we get there. So, you know, let's have a result that we could then make a strategy out of if need be.
Okay, so again, I'm going to ask for a roll call vote on Rick Fernandez as vice chair. If you want to vote for him, just say yes. If you don't care to vote for him, you can remain silent. So can we have?
Yes, sir. Bill Roberts?
Yes.
Ricardo Fernandez?
Yes.
Stephen Hollenkamp?
Yes.
Hoyt Prendel?
Yes.
Don Skelton Jr.?
Yes.
Barbara Kennedy Gibson? Barbara?
No, I thought I was supposed to remain silent. I'm waiting for Terrence.
Sorry.
Okay.
It'd be easier for me if you'd say just no then.
Okay.
Amy Espinosa?
Yes.
Christine Acosta?
Yes.
Vivian Handy?
No.
Artie Fryer?
Yes.
Edward Mrzinski?
No.
David Bailey?
Yes.
David's a yes. Jeff Lucas,
No.
Cliff Reese,
Yes.
Camilla Soto, Terrence Trott,
Yes.
Nicole Rice,
Yes.
Rick Richmond,
Yes.
Letitia Walker, and Alexis Bobak.
Yes.
Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 no's, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 yeses, which would be 17. So I think I'm missing one. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 no's. I mean, yeah, that's right, 4 no's.
That's what I counted too.
Okay, that's 18. We're good. 14 yeses, 4 no's for Rick.
So that constitutes a majority. And being the first to receive a majority, then Rick Fernandez is reelected as vice chair. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you all. If I was hearing correctly, I think even Terrence voted for me. So Terrence, if I heard that right, thank you. You and I came on this board together, and I've enjoyed serving with you, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the nomination, and yeah, you've done a fine job, so please continue. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next officer is officer at large. And I will open the nominations for officer at large.
I'd like to nominate Terrence Trott.
Okay, I hear Amy Espinosa nominating Terrence Trott.
Nicole Rice,
I'd like to nominate Stephen Holligan.
Okay, I hear Nicole Rice nominating Stephen Hollenkamp. Any other nominations for officer at large? Okay, hearing none, then I will close the nominations and we will vote in the same manner, starting with Terrence Trott. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Yes. This is for Terrence Trott. Bill Roberts.
no,
That was a no?
correct?
Okay.
Why don't we just do Stephen first?
Well, because we do it by nominations in which the order in which they received. Please proceed.
Okay. Rick Fernandez.
God, I hate this. This sucks. I love you guys both. Stephen, I'm going to give the nod to you because of your incumbency, and I appreciate your efforts your whole term. Thank you.
Stephen Hollenkamp.
No.
Okay. Hoyt Prendel.
No.
Don Skelton Jr.
No.
Barbara Kennedy Gibson.
No.
Amy Espinosa.
Yes.
Christina Costa.
No.
Vivian Handy.
sorry, but to clarify, is this for Stephen or Terrence?
This is
We
for
are-
Terrence Trott. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's right, Terrence Trott.
This is for, okay, yes.
Vivian Handy's a yes. Artie Fryer,
Yes.
Edward Merzinski,
Yes.
David Bailey,
Both. Yes.
was that a yes?
Yes.
Jeff Lucas,
No, and I agree with Rick. This sucks.
Cliff Reese,
Yes.
Camilla Soto, Terrence Trott,
Yes.
Nicole Rice,
No.
that's a no. Rick Richmond,
Yes.
Letitia Walker, and Alexis Boback.
I'm going to say yes.
Okay, give me a minute here. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm showing 9 no's and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 yeses. That's
Great.
18.
Now they need to have a duel. Do it the old-fashioned way.
Is it swords or pistols?
I think
Can we
go-
call-
I think we go swords.
Can we call Mike Pence to break the tie?
Oh, God.
Maybe not as of today.
Never mind.
All right. Since it's a tie,
People need to have this humor about it.
About 2.
okay, this is closely contested. I think maybe the proper thing to do is to move to the second nomination and see if that person can get a majority. Okay, with everybody? All right, if the clerk would call the roll, this is to vote for Stephen Hollenkamp as officer at large. Please call the
Correct.
roll.
Bill Roberts,
Yes.
Ricardo Fernandez,
Yes.
Stephen Hollenkamp, yes.
Yes.
Hoyt Prendall,
Yes.
Don Skelton Jr.,
Yes.
Barbara Kennedy Gibson,
Yes.
Amy Espinosa,
No.
Christina Costa.
Yes.
Yes, Christine, I have you down as a yes. Vivian Handy,
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Now I'm getting confused. I'm voting for Stephen, right? In this.
right.
Yes, correct. Sorry, this is getting a little confusing, but I'm with you. I think I got it right.
Okay, we're voting for Stephen. Vivian Handy,
No.
Artie Fryer,
No.
Edward Merzinski,
No.
David Bailey,
No.
Jeff Lucas,
Yes.
Cliff Reese,
Yes.
Camilla Soto. Camilla, Terrence Trott,
No.
Nicole Rice,
Yes.
Rick Richmond,
No.
Letitia Walker, and Alexis Boback.
No.
It looks like we had one change. Let me make sure. 7, 9, 10. I have 10 yeses and 8 nos.
That's what I came up with too. So, that means Stephen Hollenkamp got a majority and is elected as officer at large. Congratulations, Stephen.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Congrats, Stephen.
Thanks, David. Good luck.
Let me go get these tissues.
Nicole, I recognize.
We had spoken earlier, point of order, there are other people who are opposed as well.
I can't hear what's going on.
Yeah, I can't either.
Switch over, please. What I call for in the county is to stop and switch over. There's about 3 or 4 in there that will actually.
I wonder if Nicole could take her mask off. That might help.
Yeah.
Something.
Well, if we're going to do that, I'm actually going to make the I'm filing a citizen ethics complaint with the state in regards to the governor's orders to require in person without providing me a COVID test at the door for rapid testing. I'm a hairdresser who did not get paid. I do not receive time off quarantine, and our own governor doesn't good with all. So I will be filing with the actual, like I said, the state with the actual citizen ethics board to put people in this room. This is not safe. There is no purification system. While we're sitting here without masks, there is still movement in the air. It's offensive, and I'm appalled by it. So, sorry, I will not be taking my mask off because I did not get paid if I was sick.
Well, Chair Roberts.
I'd like to know is how many people right now, due to the current election, will be in a position to be removed from their seats. Because we just had our school board races, and we had a switch over, we had multiple switchovers in the school board. So I would just like to do a housekeeping in regards to which seats are possibly going to come up. Just kind of, I know that it was with Rick, we were talking about Rick's seat. And then, yeah, and then you're one also, there's a few people affected, so I just want to know how many seats are going to be impacted currently.
Do you understand the question?
No, I didn't get very much of that. If you could repeat the question, I'd appreciate it.
Let me try. Nicole is asking for clarification on how many seats on this committee are going to be vacated by virtue of change of nomination or end of term. Is that correct? Okay, that's the question. And
by virtue of what?
By virtue of change of the nominating entity or by end of their term.
I didn't get that.
Okay, so let me repeat it, make sure I understood it, and for the benefit of the clerk. The question was, how many seats are going to be vacated by preference of the appointing authority or a term expiring? Is that the question?
Yes.
Okay, so under the bylaws, when a term is up, a member can continue to serve until they're replaced or reappointed. So, that's the deal with Rick Fernandez currently.
And Barbara.
Right. So in terms of preference of the authority, I mean, when we have a new member come on, for example, Gwendolyn Myers is now on the MPO board as a county commissioner. She has selected somebody as her appointee. That person is going to be confirmed by the MPO board, or it's on the agenda to be confirmed by the MPO board at their next meeting a week from now. So that's how people get appointed to the committee, by appointing authority. The other way they can get appointed is if it's an at-large position, which there are some, for example, for a person under 30, we, as a committee, can select or nominate somebody who's applied, and that goes to the MPO board for confirmation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that later on in the agenda for that particular slot, but that's how that's how people rotate on and off the committee.
If I can partially answer that from a different angle. By my count, there are 5 positions on the board. Tenure will expire in the next 90 days. If that helps shed any light on it. Doesn't mean they won't be back. Just means their term expires. Okay? So I think
Yeah, we're going to talk. I'm sorry, Bill. We're going to talk a little bit about the attendance review under status reports, and I have a chart that I will show. You know, with the terms of the current membership, so that might help answer the question.
Right. Okay. So that addresses, I think, Nicole's point of order. I think we have completed the election of officers, correct, Rich?
Yes.
Ready, thank
Thank you all very much for your patience and attention with us. Our next action item is the safety performance targets. Dr. Wong, are you available to make that presentation?
Yes, I am available. Thank you. Rich or Cheryl, can you make me the presenter?
Let me see if I can do that.
All right, got it. Give me 1 sec to pull up the presentation. Can you see the PowerPoint slide?
Yes.
Got it? Okay. All right. Morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. Happy New Year if I haven't seen you already. I'm Johnny Wong, MPO staff, and this morning I'm giving you our annual update on the 2021 safety performance targets. I'll provide a little bit of context for new members. I see at least one name who wasn't here in January 2020 when we did this last time, but I'll keep it brief. So these safety performance measures that we're going to be presenting to you originate from MAP 21 legislation. That legislation requires us to track safety performance for 5 measures, which are shown on this slide in front of you. They're all set to predict what the crash statistics will be in the upcoming calendar year. So for all of the measures that we're going to be discussing this morning, we're talking about what will happen by the end of 2021. The federal reporting requirements for how to do this say that we have to track measures and establish targets using a 5-year rolling average, and that the 5 years worth of data end in the year prior to the year that we're making projections for. So to boil that down and make it as simple as possible, we're trying to project what will happen by the end of 2021, and we're using data from 2017 through 2020. In addition to the 5 measures that are shown on this screen, our MPO board voted last year to track 2 additional measures, namely year-end fatality totals. So that's not a 5-year rolling average, that's just the straight up absolute value at the end of the year, as well as motorcycle fatalities. That MAP 21 legislation requires both state DOTs and MPOs to report performance and set targets every year. This is the 5th year that we're doing this. For the previous 4 years, FDOT has set the state targets at 0. However, this past April, the Federal Highway Administration determined that the state has not made significant progress toward achieving that target. It's my understanding that Federal Highway Administration and FDOT are working in consultation to establish meaningful, data-driven, and realistic targets for 2021, but as of today, they have not yet been finalized. We typically allow the state DOT to take the lead on establishing targets. And so they usually set their targets in August, but because of that review process that was ongoing this past year, we're taking the lead now because their targets have not been finalized. So whereas we would normally have 180 days from the time that the state sets the targets for us to set ours, we're just kind of chugging along. And we have up until February 26th to determine what our targets will be for the end of this calendar year. And from that date forward, when the targets are adopted by the board, anytime we update or amend either the TIP or the LRTP, those new targets will have to be reflected in those documents. And at a future date, the Federal Highway Administration will again review FDOT's targets once those are established, and the DOT will review ours and make a determination as to whether or not we're actually making progress toward achieving those. A lot has happened in the past year. As I mentioned, this is the 5th year that we're doing this, but this is the first year that I and my team are less than confident about what our year-end total will be. Typically, we use a pretty standardized methodology, and we have somewhat good confidence that we will approximate what our projections are. However, we did the same thing last year, and by mid-April, we kind of saw that our projections were going to be way off. A lot of things happened. Of course, the pandemic had a significant impact on vehicle miles traveled. It also led to much higher speed on the interstates, and we were tracking that trend throughout the year. So while there were fewer cars, which would normally create a less dangerous situation, the cars that were on the road were driving much faster than normal due to the low volumes. So that is the big story of 2020, is the pandemic and its impact upon travel behavior. What we saw resulting from the pandemic was a lot of people working from home, people making fewer discretionary trips. And by year's end, that kind of led to about a 10% VMT as opposed to what we would normally see. And on a monthly basis, that vehicle volume was down by anywhere between 10 to 20%. And then it kind of gradually rebounded as the year progressed. Despite the pandemic, our planning work did continue, and we were able to produce a number of studies. We led some Vision Zero corridor studies, which are being shown to the board this coming month. We looked at some very specific problems or challenges that some of the corridors on our high injury network are facing, and we came up with very detailed strategies for how to attack that speed, how to attack those crash problems. As well as looking at a very detailed picture of certain corridors, we came out with general recommendations. So we're working now to wrap up the Vision Zero Speed Management Action Plan, and that had a list of speed management recommendations that could be applied to the whole county. And the last important news from 2020 is that the Independent Oversight Committee held its first public hearing in October, and that committee took action to certify the 2021 project plans for all the agencies. However, a more recent update is that the litigation over the validity of the surtax remains ongoing, and you'll see how that plays into some of our assumptions for 2021 later in the presentation. I apologize, I'm going to be clicking around a little bit. My slides seem to be out of order. But anyway, before we reveal what our projections are for 2021, I want to quickly review what our methodology is for forecasting performance and targets. And this methodology has been nominated by the Federal Highway Administration to be a best practice. We've shared this methodology with MPOs around the state and around the nation, some of whom have adopted our approach. So we're pretty proud of the work that we've done. And I know that many of you know this inside and out, but I'll quickly recap. We come up with our year-end safety targets by projecting the number of crashes we'll have by year's end. We do a simple linear projection, and from that we subtract the crash reduction benefits that we have calculated from our 2045 long-range transportation plan update. To produce that update, we looked at the amount of revenue that's typically invested in safety projects on a year-end basis. And then we optimize what the benefits would be by saying, if we were to invest in the strategies that reduce crashes the most, what could our crash reduction benefits be? That doesn't mean that the agencies will invest in those strategies. However, this is kind of like what could happen in a best case scenario. So based on what our estimates are for revenue being invested in safety projects for this coming year, we're expecting about a 1% decrease in all crashes over the course of the year. And there's a second scenario which we don't believe will play out, but in the future, if the Supreme Court finds the surtax valid and they allow those funds to be released and we program them for safety projects, we could see a crash reduction of anywhere between 2 to 3%, possibly much higher than that, but 2 to 3% is kind of like a standard estimate. All right, we have shown you in the past how we could achieve a 35% reduction by 2045. So if those sales tax funds are released and we invest them in safety projects, a 2 to 3% reduction cumulative by 2045 would result in a 35% reduction of crashes across all types, all modes, and all severities. You know what, let me close this presentation real quick because I had some slides that I wanted to show you and they're not appearing in this version. My apologies. Actually, you know what, that's going to take a little bit of time. So even though I don't have a slide, I'll just quickly go over what some of our assumptions were for how we're projecting the 2021 targets. So we looked at a few things that we believe will hold true in the coming year. The first assumption is that we made an accurate estimate of what the vehicle miles traveled were in 2020. The vehicle miles traveled that we have from 2020 will greatly affect what we expect to happen in the coming years. We looked at gas tax revenue in 2019, compared it to revenues received in 2020, and we estimated that there was about a 10% drop in vehicle miles traveled throughout the entire year. The second assumption we made is that the traffic volumes in 2020 are going to rebound. So by year's end, meaning December of 2020, we were hovering around an 8% reduction from the previous year. We've seen reports from UCF's Institute for Economic Forecasting that say the state is going to have an accelerated economic recovery compared to other states. So we believe that by year's end, we'll be coming close to our 2019 vehicle miles traveled. And the implications for the economic recovery also have an impact on vehicle miles traveled by motorcycles. And so with fewer motorcycle riders out on the network, we anticipate that fatalities for that mode will be reduced. I'll cover that in a second. Let's expedite this and get into our projections because I have the slide up already. So this is the first of our performance predictions. The first one is a discretionary target that was adopted by our board last year. This is the year-end fatality total, not a 5-year rolling average. We ended 2020 with 192 fatalities, and we estimate that we'll perform slightly better in this year. A 1% reduction will net us 2 fewer fatalities. And so the performance target for 2021 will be not to exceed 190 fatalities. One of the reasons we predict that despite our VMT starting to increase, that we will have lower fatalities is because of those motorcycle fatalities that I talked about. In 2019, we had an inordinate number of motorcycle fatalities, but we've been seeing fewer motorcycle riders in 2020, and we expect that trend to continue this year. The second target is a requirement by the Federal Highway Administration. This is fatalities calculated on a 5-year rolling average based upon the prescribed methodology that we already discussed. We're predicting that we'll end the year with a 5-year average of 195. And so our target is to not exceed 195 fatalities. The third target is motorcycle fatalities. Again, this one is discretionary. On a 5-year rolling average, in 2020, we we significantly dropped our 5-year rolling average from the previous year. 2019 was in many ways an abnormal year. We typically hover around 40 motorcycle fatalities. In 2019, we had 53. This past year in 2020, we cut that by more than half. So we ended the year with 25, and we expect that trend to continue because with the economy kind of like coming out of a recession, we're not expecting that we'll see a lot of recreational riders. What we suspected was responsible for the really high numbers in 2019 were folks with a little bit of discretionary income deciding to ride a motorcycle for fun. We don't believe that it was their primary personal vehicle. And so now that the economy is kind of like bottoming out, maybe recovering a little bit, we're not expecting we're going to see a great number of new motorcycle licenses being issued and not a lot of new motorcycle registrations being issued as well. So our target by the end of the year will be to not exceed 34.95. Our fourth target is the average serious injuries over 5 years. With a 1% reduction, we're projecting that it will not exceed 1,201. The next target is non-motorized, i.e. bike and ped fatalities and serious injuries combined. Last year, we had a really high number, and that kind of makes sense based on everything we know about the effects of the pandemic on travel behavior. So we had a lot of cyclists and pedestrians who wouldn't normally be walking and riding their bike. And so with such a high concentration of cyclists and pedestrians in the downtown urban area, we had quite a bit more injuries and fatalities than what we were expecting. Last year, we set a target to not exceed 222. We missed that target by quite a bit. We came in at 229. And again, that's mostly attributable to the high number of crashes due to the pandemic behavior. But we expect that that will kind of normalize through 2021, and we should end the year with a target of less than 230. The next targets are fatality rate per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. Based on that methodology and based on our VMT projections, we're expecting to not exceed 1.38, which would be a pretty significant drop from the previous year. And our last target is serious injury rate per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. Based on our projections, we're expecting the target to not exceed 8.49 by the end of the year. I just want to quickly show you a report card of how we performed in 2020 compared to our projections that we set at the beginning of the year. In January, when we established the targets, we set a target to not exceed 209 fatalities. We met that. At the year's end, we ended up with 192. We set a target for the 5-year fatality average to not exceed 204, and we came in at 202. We set a target for serious injuries to not exceed 1255. We landed on that on the nose. Motorcycle fatalities, we set the target at 44.5. We ended at 40.2. We did not meet our non-motorized fatality and injury target, again, attributable to the large number of cyclists and pedestrians. So we set a target of 222. We came in quite a bit higher at 229, so we did not meet that. Our fatalities per VMT, we set the target at 1.41. I want to say that we were not fortunate, it's not the right word, but we were close to our target because of the impact of COVID on our travel behavior. If COVID did not reduce the VMT by that much, we would not come anywhere near our target. But at year's end, we were kind of within striking distance of achieving that. We ended at 1.45 and the target we set was 1.41. And lastly, our serious injury rate, we set the target at 8.7 and we ended with a 9. Oh, sorry, quickly. The caveat to the two targets incorporating the vehicle miles traveled, our fatalities per VMT, the caveat there is that we went through painstaking effort to estimate what the VMT was in 2020. We don't have accurate numbers yet. Those figures aren't released until summer of this year. So we're just kind of guessing. We looked at 16 count stations that are maintained by the DOT. And again, we also looked at gas tax revenue. We did our best, but we won't have really a clear picture of whether or not our fatalities per VMT and our injuries per VMT were close until we get the final data. Based on all the data I presented to you today and our projections and our assumptions for what we'll see in 2021, our recommended action to you is to approve the calendar year 2021 safety targets based on the already adopted methodology. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. It is an action item. We'll be happy to take any questions for Dr. Wong regarding the presentation after we consider a motion to approve. Other questions? I don't see any hands raised.
Hello? Oh. Hi, this is Vivian. I'm still having trouble hearing. Were you asking for questions or comments, or where are we?
I'm asking for questions, and David Bailey is recognizing.
Dr. Watt, I thank you for the presentation. I was just
I'm sorry, this is the clerk. I can't hear a thing.
Can you define what VMT stood for?
Vehicle miles traveled. So that's an estimate of traffic volumes, right? Yeah. Sorry about that.
Sorry, I thought you were saying V as in boy.
No mistake.
I think, Mr. Chairman, I think Vivian Handy wanted to be recognized.
Vivian, go ahead.
Yes, this is not a question, but a comment, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'd like to point out the last month's vote by the county commissioner to not enact or not, they did not vote in favor of a future hearing and vote to increase the transportation impact fees effective dates. So they're going to be phased in instead of immediately being, 100% in force. I spoke at that hearing, and particularly for the sake of the new commissioners, it infuriates me, this whole Vision Zero thing, that clearly we are still in the unenviable position of having some of the highest pedestrian and bicycle fatalities in the country. We're still approving sprawling development with no transportation concurrence. And in my mind, this Vision Zero is nothing more than lip service if we can't get a board and an MPO that is willing to enact the transportation impact fees that are absolutely vital to meeting these goals that Mr. Wong has and his staff have put together and presented here. And it's just a comment for the record, and I think it needs to be shared, particularly with the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Amy Espinoza is recognized.
Yes, Johnny, I have two questions for you. One was, I noted here that you had 1,400 miles of sidewalks. Is that replacement? Is that new? And I'm assuming that they're up to 88 standards. Did you hear the question?
Yeah, I did. So that statistic that was shown on the slide is showing the extent of the transportation infrastructure, specifically safety structures that could be paid for if we had revenue from the sales tax. So over a 25-year period, and the sales tax sunsets after 30 years. So in reality, we could, continue that for an additional 5. But if those funds were released in 2020 when we expected them, by 2045, we would have been able to fund 1,400 additional sidewalk miles. Our goal would be to have at least one full continuous sidewalk on one side of the road for all corridors across the county.
Okay, and then the second question is, smart cities are becoming more and more prevalent with sensors and things of that nature. In these statistics that you present, are any of those sensor improvements or smart city improvements incorporated into these figures?
Yeah, we have. I think I heard you. Were you asking about what percentage of the revenue would be dedicated to smart city infrastructure?
No, my question is, we are implementing smart city structure or infrastructure. My assumption is that will help improve pedestrian safety as part of these targets. Are we incorporating the statistics from, let's say, live stage, specifically from smart city technology?
I couldn't hear the last sentence. I heard everything up until the question.
All right. Can you hear me better now? Is that?
Your system isn't hooked in. Obviously.
Can you type it in the chat? I love talking about smart cities, so I want to answer, but I couldn't hear the question.
Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. So my question was, with the smart city infrastructure that's being planned and laid out, my assumption is that there are measures that are included in that technology that help save lives. Is that information part of your report?
Yes, it is. So when we produced the needs assessment, we looked at two different types of investments. We looked at traditional safety countermeasures, things like sidewalks, bike lanes, crosswalks. We also took a look at some of the more high-tech or innovative solutions like rapid flashing beacons, highway ramp metering. And we looked, there's a database that's publicly available called the Crash Modification Factor Clearinghouse, CMF. And that is a culmination of a lot of different studies done by academics and transportation research firms. So they look at what the individual benefits will be of each of these technologies. We tried our best to see what the impact would be of bundling them together, because in practice, we're rarely going to implement just one countermeasure. We're not just going to do a project to install a crosswalk. We would typically bundle that with like an RFB, rapid flashing beacon, and a bike lane, or narrowing the lane widths, something like that. And we did produce a spreadsheet showing what the impact would be of each one of those technologies. Some of the really innovative, like cutting edge ones, they might not have accurate or precise information on them, certainly not empirical data. So we just kind of have to take our best guess as to how they would affect travel behavior. I hope that answers your question. I'd be happy to share anything I have with you. Great.
Thank you.
I think that answers the question. Christina Costa is recognized. Christine, we can't hear you. Are you muted?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right, sorry, my headphones are a little old and they need to be replaced, so sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. Johnny, I just wanted to say thank you for putting this information together. I had a question about a slide. You had a projection of reducing our crash fatalities by 35%. I wonder if you could flip to that slide, and there were some recommendations. Yeah.
This one?
No, the one that's listed like how we're gonna do it. Is it, it was like the tool set of complete streets, more sidewalks. I don't see it now.
Is it this one?
Yeah, this must be it. So I have to just tell all of you that this whole process is just so disheartening and frankly sickening to me. This is the 5th year that I've kind of sat in on it, but it's the first time I've had more than just a public member of the public viewing and opportunity to comment. And I know that it's not any person's, you know, we can't lay fault at a person, but it just feels, it struck me as just a citizen listening in a few years ago as kind of like how we're going to budget these deaths. And it is exactly what the Swedish parliament was dealing with when they first declared that 0 was the only number they could find morally acceptable. And that was about almost 30 years ago now, and that's where Vision Zero was born. Now, to Vivian's remark a minute ago about Vision Zero being lip service, I sure hope not, but I can tell just from this process that we have a long way to go. So my question here about this particular slide, Johnny, is I don't see anything here that just flat out says speed reduction, just wholesale speed reduction. And I want to be really, really clear here that I'm not saying eliminating speeding. That's different. I'm talking about wholesale speed reductions. And so I guess I just wanted to hear you and speak to that as what I believe to be, I mean, I'll stop talking now, but go ahead.
I would have preferred to defer to you because the work that you've done with Gina and with Bike Walk Tampa Bay or Walk Bike, I can never remember, but you all preach the message that we ourselves as an agency would like to preach. Speed is the #1 danger to people on our roadways. Almost all of the crashes, most certainly the severe and fatal crashes that we see, are attributable to speed in some way. Some of the strategies that we have for combating speed are the complete streets. So our focus in this work, because we have to figure out how to invest the money, is by investing in structures that will encourage folks to drive slower. A speed limit change wouldn't cost us any money. That is an act of legislature. So we wouldn't even need to expend any of our revenue set aside for safety projects to make that happen. But in the absence of an act of the legislature, what we can do is try to design roads so that it's uncomfortable for folks to speed on them.
I guess I just, in that case, would ask somewhere that the conveyance, we just have so much public educating to do about why our crashes are so high, and we can post any speed limit we want. We know that motorists and humans, all of us, when we drive, we will drive in a manner that is consistent with roadway design. So we can post a reduced speed limit, and that's like a tiny little plea to roadway users, but it's not roadway, it does not really affect change. So I guess I just want speed, the message of speed being the primary culprit, to be somehow revealed in your messaging on how we're going to do this. You know, reduce speeds by implementing complete streets, and I just don't see speed on here, and I would like to appeal to you to find a way to incorporate that.
Definitely will. Thanks for that feedback, Christine.
Thanks, Johnny.
See Nicole hand up. Nicole.
Gosh.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. That silver speaker seems to be working better.
I completely agree with what was just stated. But I really think that when we look at this, and this is imperative when this goes before the MPO board for vote, obviously we're supposed to vote for this and move on to the plan. 35% reduction by 2045, I mean, that's over 20 years, this is the goal. It's laughable. Yet that's the best that we can do here, regardless of budgetary restrictions. I don't think that's a very, I don't think that's a goal that's actually going to make any kind of changes with the kind of growth that we're experiencing as a county. I think we're going to be actually behind the 8 ball on these numbers with the amount of growth. And I'd like to know, did we take into consideration those growth patterns? I'm not quite sure why this is, I don't even know what we can or cannot do with this.
Yeah, Nikki, I think we've spoken about this before offline. I totally agree and understand where you're coming from. The 35% is the reduction that we can prove using data. We've long suspected that if we were to invest this amount of money, we would see a reduction far beyond that. We believe that there's a synergistic effect by bundling these treatments, which is why we're advocating to do complete streets that involve a lot of things: sidewalks, reduce lane widths, reduce speed limit if possible, barriers with bike lanes. If we bundle these treatments like we did on Fletcher Avenue, we expect that we'll see a lot more than just a 2% reduction on an annual basis. When we implemented these treatments on Fletcher Avenue, and granted this like one of our best success stories, but we reduced crashes by 50%. But we don't have data that we can point to say certainly or with certainty that we will reduce by 50%. But to me, it makes sense. Those crash modification factors that estimate what the crash reduction benefits will be are done in isolation. So they're only looking at doing one treatment at a time. But we know that if you do 5 or even more treatments on a roadway, it totally changes the character of it. It's the difference between putting a sidewalk on Fowler Avenue that's probably not going to have a significant impact versus doing 20 treatments on Fowler Avenue. We could totally change it, and we would probably see benefits far beyond what the data show. But to just like kind of summarize, we calculated 35% because that's the data, like we can kind of be held to that standard, but we're really expecting that if we were to invest all this money, we would surpass that by a large margin.
I feel like that message, though, is something that while we've discussed it, not just here, but across the board in the committee, or people who are advocates, I think it's really hard to make the assumption that even people who sit on a voting board have comprehension of how all these things work together in synergy. So I think that's my concern when you look at this. And clearly, I mean, the standards are the standard. So I guess I just make a motion that we do the vote on action item and move forward. But it is still concerning that it's getting lost in translation, the connectivity of all these different treatments together to create.
Right.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thanks for that feedback, Nikki.
By Nicole, to approve the recommendation in the report. Is there a second?
I'm sorry, I did not get the motion. I couldn't hear. Rich, could you repeat what she said?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't get it either. Bill, could you repeat the motion, please?
Nicole Mike made a motion to approve the report and advance it to the MPO.
Rich, could you repeat that? I couldn't hear that either.
Nicole Rice made the motion to approve the item and forward it to the board. I don't know if there was a second. Was there a second?
Second. Amy Espinosa, second.
Okay, thank you.
A second. Is there further discussion?
I would like to add to that motion. I do support the motion, but I want the caveat that the words speed reduction be incorporated. I think Johnny expressed a willingness to do that, but I just want it to be included in our motion. that speed reduction be identified as one of the means by which we can accomplish our goals.
So are you offering an amendment to
Yes,
the motion?
I motion that we modify the motion to include approval of this report with the caveat that the words speed reduction be incorporated into the report. Thank you.
We have an amendment. There is a motion for an amendment. Is there a second to the amendment?
I'll second.
Amy Espinoza, second the amendment. Any discussion on the amendment? Any discussion? Seeing none, we will take a roll call vote on the amendment to add the word speed reduction to the recommendation of the MPO for this report. Ms. Madam, will clerk call the roll?
Yes. Bill Roberts,
Yes.
Ricardo Fernandez,
Yes.
Stephen Hollenkamp,
Yes.
Hoyt Prindle,
Yes.
Don Skelton Jr.,
Yes.
Barbara Kennedy Gibson,
Yes.
Amy Espinosa,
Yes.
Christine Acosta,
Yes.
Vivian Handy,
Yes.
Artie Fryer,
Yes.
Edward
Yes.
Murkowski, I'm sorry, Edward,
Yes. Yes.
David Bailey,
Yes.
Jeff Lucas,
Yes.
Cliff Reese,
Yes.
Camilo Soto, Terrence Trott,
Yes.
Nicole Rice,
Yes.
that's a yes,
Yes.
Rick Richmond,
Yes.
Letitia Walker, and Alexis Bobak.
Yes.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18 yeses, no nos, 2 absent.
Thank you. The amendment offered by Christina Acosta is adopted. We'll now vote on the main motion, which is to move the recommendation to report to the MPO board as amended.
Mr. Chairman? Hey, Bill?
Yes.
If you all want, and I just make this suggestion in the interest of time, a roll call vote is nice, but it's not necessary. You could ask for a voice vote, and then if there were any nay votes, we could identify who voted nay.
I like that suggestion. I would like to go straight to the nay votes. If there are any who are opposed to the motion to approve the recommendation as amended, please raise your hand and also speak up. Anyone opposed to the motion?
That is the motion.
Anyone opposed to the motion? Hearing no opposition, the motion as amended is passed. Thank you, Dr. Wong. Thank you, Nicole, for your motion.
All right, thank you all.
All right. The next item on our agenda is also an action item for C, the Flower Avenue Multimodal Study and Transportation Improvement Program. Is this available? Yes, or Shaka? Who's going to lead off?
So, Mr. Chairman, this is actually a two-person presentation. Ken Spitz from Florida DOT is first going to talk about the Fowler Avenue multimodal study, and he'll be followed by Bashaka talking about the follow-on Transportation Improvement Program amendment. So with your permission, I'd like to ask Ken, if he's online, can he speak up?
Yes, I am.
Good morning, Ken.
Good morning.
I have your slides open. Would you like me to show those?
Sure. Sure.
Okay. Let me.
That is the older version. Can you give me the control and I can do mine?
Sure. Cheryl, can you make Ken the presenter?
Okay, let's see if I can get this one. All right, it's not showing the correct screen. Okay. I have a dual monitor. It's on one of the monitors. I'm not sure if you're seeing it. There should be a splash page that says University Area Multimodal Feasibility Study.
No.
If you'd like, I can try to open the presentation you sent me earlier this morning, I think.
Well, there's one that's, and I'm sorry for the delay. There's one that says October 2020 HCMPO TAC at the bottom. You had the one from September.
Okay, let me see if I can find it.
And partly I wanted to show that because you may have seen some media about some safety improvements we're making along Fowler, and the October presentation has more details on that.
Okay, hang on. Yeah, I don't see it, that I actually received that, Ken. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and do the one that you have then. I won't take up any more of your time with that.
Okay. Can you see that?
Yes.
All right, let me see if I can go full screen on this. Still seeing it?
Yes.
Okay, you just tell me when to go ahead.
Okay, you can go ahead to the next slide. So the study I'm going to talk about is the University Area Multimodal Feasibility Study, and what we, first sort of the overview of it. There were 3 key corridor needs that we identified and that future actions would focus on. The first, as you can see, is safety. We realize there's a safety issue on Fowler Avenue. We know that we need to improve pedestrian facilities. We need to have more crossing opportunities. We're interested in the use of what's called LPIs, leading pedestrian intervals, which give pedestrians an opportunity to get off of the curb first before other traffic gets to move, so that they're further into the crosswalk so they can be more easily seen. We know we need upgraded lighting for pedestrians, cyclists, and also for drivers. We know that we need to reduce the cyclist exposure to higher speed vehicles. We also want to lower vehicle travel speeds in segments with more pedestrians and cyclist activity. The second key corridor need is transit flexibility, as I'll go into. This area is projected to have HART's BRT, bus rapid transit system, utilize a section of Fowler Avenue. There's also talk of a regional bus rapid transit system, which may use another part of Fowler Avenue, more to the east, towards I-75. So again, whatever designs that we want to come up with in the future, we know we need to be flexible, so transit can be part of that. And then the third key corridor need is intersection efficiency. Fowler Avenue does move quite a number of vehicles every day. It is a regional arterial through the area, serving USF and that whole area. So we also know that there's over 3 million square feet of mixed use and over 3,000 new residences that have already been approved in the study area. That means increased trip making and, for at least some people, increased future volumes. So we're also interested in using what we call innovative intersection designs where feasible. We will actually get that more in what we call the PD&E phase, project development and environmental phase, which follows this study. Okay, next, please. So timeframes for actions. We have 3 timeframes, and what we want to show with this slide is there's short-term, medium-term, and long-term. What can happen here with this is we can do minor construction actions right away within 5 years. In fact, we have some slated that I will be talking about. But while that's going on, we're not just focusing on those, we're also taking actions that are for the midterm. So we can do some of the planning, design, and if necessary, right-of-way acquisition. So if you think about it, rather than it being linear, it's short-term overlaps with medium-term, overlaps with long-term. And so the view that we're taking for this corridor is of many years, not just short-term. Next, please. So I think you want to go one more. I believe there's some dots that should show up. There we go. Short-term actions. So for fiscal year 2022 to 2024, and I will mention FDOT's fiscal year begins in July. So that's actually July 2021 for the start of the fiscal year. We're looking at intersection improvements at Nebraska, 12th, 19th, 23rd, and 56th Street. Again, I apologize you don't have the actual updated slides because I do show some before and afters for those. But these are the 5 areas where we are have designs that are already approved and they're scheduled for construction during this time frame. Go ahead and hit it one more time. Leading pedestrian intervals, that signal design improvement that I mentioned, we are looking to do that at Nebraska, Bruce B. Downs, McKinley Drive, 50th Street, and 56th Street. This is sort of a newer technology. It's a signal change, but what it does is, as I mentioned, it allows pedestrians to get a little bit of a head start off of the curb out into the crosswalk, so they're more visible, especially by the folks that are making left turns. Next. And then complete intersection crosswalks. We do have some crosswalks to the eastern part of the area at Bull Run, Rain Tree, Gillette, and River Hills, where we don't actually have crosswalks on the road on all 4 corners. So that's what we mean by complete intersection crosswalks. Okay, next, please.
Excuse me for interrupting. Yes. I'm sorry. I just wanted to know, Ken, if did you have photos before and after for all of these different improvements?
Yes. Yes, I did, and that was in the presentation that we did to CAC, which I thought that you guys had. I believe we had sent it. So
can you maybe email it to Rich real quick? I'm sorry, I know it might take a couple minutes, but I'd like to.
Can I just jump in? I think the next presenter, Vishaka, has some before and after.
Okay, she may have those then.
Of the specific intersection. So if we can hold on, then we can see if we need to send anything.
All right. Yeah. No, that's perfect. Thank you. Just as long, because I know a few members, had questions from the last presentation. I think some of this would help to address.
Right. Yeah, I would be happy to send it. The problem is it's like a 15 or 20 meg file, so it's pretty hard to send. You have to do it by special. You can't do it by email. It's too large.
All right.
But Vishaka may have them.
Apologize for the interruption. Thank you.
No problem. So on this slide, we have those things that I mentioned, what the proposed implementation schedule is. And What you'll see down in the lower corner on the right there is our fiscal years over the next 5 fiscal years. And then the green represents design. So you can see that the first several projects that we have listed there do have total estimated budgets. We actually do have this money programmed for these improvements. So the design would take place, in fact, it's being worked on now, fiscal year 21, and construction would be in fiscal year 22. And that's about $3 to $4 million worth of intersection improvements that we're looking at, again, primarily for pedestrian safety. The other longer term, midterm and long-term projects are listed towards the bottom of that list. And as you can see, because they're longer term, they're out further into the fiscal years. So you can see we have a PD&E phase, again, project development and environmental phase. That's where we do a more in-depth design look. We're doing, this study was more of a planning and feasibility. Then we'll go into the PD&E stage over the next 2 fiscal years, 1.5 really. And then we're looking at design following that in fiscal year 23, with with construction then following on from that in fiscal year 24 and 25. Next, please. Okay. So we've talked about the short term and what's already programmed. So now let's talk about midterm and long term. As a result of the multimodal feasibility study, we came up with 3 different conceptual designs: bat lane, frontage lane, and median transit way. And I will bring your attention to the asterisk there and the note at the bottom. These concepts will be analyzed in the PD&E study, but others may also be developed. So this is not a closed-ended. We have not recommended one concept over another. There is no decision that's been made exactly about how it will be designed. But these are 3 that we've identified to go forward, and then others could be developed or tweaked in the PD&E phase. So a BAT lane is business access and transit lane. And basically, this is a right turn lane that serves as a bus lane, but also allows people to turn into adjacent properties. So think of it as a shared right turn in transit. We consider that minor to major construction. It's a medium-term action. Then we have a frontage lane concept. That would actually separate one lane from the main line, and there it would act as like a frontage road or a multi-way boulevard, some folks call it. That's separated from the main roadway, and then the curb side of that would have a bus-only lane. Again, that's minor to major construction. That's a medium-term action. And then we have a median transit way. In this case, the BRT lanes, or potentially an LRT, light rail transit guideway, could be in the center. That's where the stations would be also. That would be separated from the roadway. That's obviously more of a major construction long-term action. So we'll go ahead into the next slide and we'll see some pictures. Okay, so this is conceptual designs. I will also point out that what we are looking on this, we don't show dimensions on this, but what we are looking for, and it plays into your previous topic, we are looking at a mainline speed here of 35 miles an hour. So we are talking about lowering the speed limit on Fowler Avenue. We understand that we would need to make physical changes. We would be looking at narrowing some of the lanes. The transit lanes are a little tougher to narrow because the buses are wider. They also have the mirrors on the side, so they need more clearance. But the main lines, we're looking at 10.5, maybe 11-foot lanes there to help bring about speed reduction. So 35 mile an hour on here. We see some examples of potential designs from San Francisco and Minneapolis, Minnesota. We'll have these on some of the other slides to show you. These aren't, we're trying to take best practices from other locations in the United States and actually in the world and see what we can do with applying to this. You can see here that we do have all the modes. We have the little icons that show pedestrian, bike, transit, and regular vehicle users on here. And you can see the green is the bicycle lane, and it would be separated from the roadway. It would run along the roadway, but it would be back behind the transit stations, bus stops. Although it does say bus only lane, this is a BAT, so you could make right turns from there. We're not showing here any driveways to businesses or that kind of thing. It's a conceptual design. The bus stations would be located primarily at intersections. So we didn't show an intersection in this. This is what's called the typical section. Okay, let's go to the next one. So in this, you have a frontage lane. So we would reduce the number of main line lanes by one and move one of the lanes over to the side on the other side of the transit. You can kind of think of this, I don't know if many of you have ever driven in Texas, but there's a lot of side roads that they have, frontage roads in Texas. This wouldn't be quite as far apart as they are, but it would have areas where you could then move over to go then to the access to the local land uses. In this conceptual design, the main line would still be 35 miles an hour speed limit. The outside lane, the frontage lane, would be 25 miles an hour. This is why the bike lane then is moved to along the frontage road. The frontage road would be then where you would turn right into adjacent properties. That's where their driveways would be located. So the one disadvantage of this is it does separate the bicycles from the transit. It's tough to fit that in if you can't put them right behind each other. The bikes would have some issues with the little slip ramps there to go from the side road over to the main line. There are some examples of this we've shown: Montgomery County in Maryland, also Queens, New York. This is actually a pretty common design in New York City, in Queens and Brooklyn. They have a system of boulevards that are somewhat like this. We'll go to the next slide. And the third one, which is the long term, is the median transit way. We have examples here shown from Alexandria, Virginia, and Quito in Ecuador. Again, 35 mile an hour would be the vehicle speed limit on the main line. And as you can see, what we have here is transit in the center. It would be separated from the roadways. This doesn't mean that you need to have transit signal priority at intersections so that those vehicles are not, their flow is not interrupted by other vehicles, regular vehicles. It does also mean, again, that you have a separation from bicycle to transit, however. So again, the stations would be at intersections, as you can see kind of there in the example of Quito. That would be probably where bikes and pedestrians would access the transit then. Again, though, we do show all the modes here. We do have them. I also want to mention all three of these actually do fit within the existing right-of-way throughout the corridor. So all of these designs were not meant to mean that we have to go after and buy any right-of-way along this area. Curbs would obviously have to be moved. That's why they're major construction on some of these. But we're able to fit it all within the existing right-of-way, primarily, again, by reducing the width of the lanes or the number of lanes. And we'll go to the last one. Now, I mentioned, and you may have to hit a couple here to get the picture to come up. HART got a head start on us on their study for the BRTs. So they were kind of going in parallel with each other. So HART did develop an arterial BRT concept, which kind of uses our median guideway idea also. And on this, you can see it might be a little tough to see the dimensions, but here you can see they're showing very much like we did. They're showing vehicle lanes, they're showing the transit in the center, and also they're showing some separation between the pedestrians and bicyclists on the roadways. They're showing shared use paths. Their concept, I believe, though, does require a little bit of right-of-way, some minor right-of-way. But again, as I said, we reduce the width of the lanes that we have, and in some cases the number of lanes, then we can fit it back within the existing right-of-way. You can see here that the median guideway they were looking at was between Nebraska and Brewski Downs on Fowler. We are working with them, obviously, during the PD&E process. We'll coordinate with them on what we actually end up designing for that. That'll also be where we'll get public input. There'll be meetings, hearings on that. There'll be the different presentations on what proposals and what we're finding and any of those designs. So that's sort of a quick overview of what the multimodal feasibility study has come up with. And I don't know if you want to wait for questions until after Vishaka, or if you want me to take them now, Rich.
Well, I'd say if there are questions about what you just presented, it'd probably be good to handle those now, if that's okay with the committee.
Hey guys, not sure if you can hear me. I'm not really close to the speaker, so sorry for yelling. Thank you, Ken. That was a great presentation of these three options: the bat lane, frontage road, medium transit way.
I'm curious, how would you rank these in terms of cost? And how would you rank these 3/4 in terms of the impact to safety?
Okay. The cost is the easier question to answer there. The cost would be the BAT lane is the cheapest of the three. And then the median guideway is definitely the most expensive. And it would be somewhat in the order I presented them there. Number 1 would be cheapest, 2 would be the second, and then 3 would be the most expensive. As to safety impacts, that's a little tougher question to answer, to be honest with you, because especially where it comes into play with the pedestrian and bicycle impact, because as you could tell from those designs, especially the bicycle paths are in different locations. And so they would have different ways that they would interact with traffic. So I'm hesitant to answer that one. I don't know. I would say that is something, though, that would be looked at in more detail once it's more engineered in the next phase during the PD&E study.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
David Bailey is recognized.
Thank you, Ken, for the presentation. My question is regarding the design speed at 35 miles per hour. How did you come up, or how did you guys come up with the design speed for 30 miles per hour?
Not getting it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I heard the first half and I didn't hear the last half.
I was just wondering, how did you guys come up with the 35 miles per hour design speed?
We came up with the 35 mile per hour design speed because we wanted to fit everything within the existing right of way. So we looked at it as if that was, say, vacant land, right? If it was greenfield, and we wanted to put these kind of improvements in, or these kind of facilities in within a certain amount of space, what would the design speed have to be? So we came up with 35 was the best fit for that. As you know, the speed limit, I believe, out there is currently 45, and further to towards I-75, it actually goes up to 55. So, different areas are going to have different speed limits based on how they get used. What we're looking at here specifically, as I mentioned, was to like 56th Street. We think we can get 35 in there with, and still follow our design guidelines, the state design manual, and get 35 in there. Now, as you all are well aware, posting it and getting people to do it is sometimes different, but we believe that we can design this to 35 miles per hour.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes.
Other questions from committee members? Hoyt Spindle is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just can we go back a second before we change that slide, please, Rich?
Okay.
A couple comments and then the question. Go back. Yep, that's fine, because I think it easily illustrates what I'm doing. One of the things that's concerning to me about a couple of the concepts discussed was needing to acquire additional right-of-way. Fowler's a pretty wide road as it is, and if we're going to improve pedestrian and bicyclist access, and even pedestrians trying to use the transit, can we go back to the slide, please?
I'm trying to get there. Hang on.
I'll get there. It's a little concerning that we're talking about increasing the right-of-way of a road that in many other jurisdictions would be designed as a freeway, given the lanes and the width. With regards to my concern about the median transit way, which is why I keep opening that slide and come back and stay for a second.
Well, let me, I think you misunderstood me. I said it's within the existing right-of-way. We would not be adding right-of-way. We would not be acquiring more right-of-way. It would be within the existing.
Okay, I must have been confusing it, because I thought I heard a comment about additional right-of-way at some point.
I think it was no additional right-of-way would be required. That may have been what I, okay.
Thanks for that clarification. With the median guideway here, my concern is this. There are 4 vehicle travel lanes in each direction, which, like I said, in most jurisdictions that they would try to build that as a freeway rather than a local access road with, you know, traffic and other things coming in from the side. I'm concerned that if we spent the money, and this is the most expensive option, if I heard correctly, you know, there's not going to be a huge rush of people wanting to cross 4 lanes of traffic, even with a signal, to access the median guideway to use the transit. That's why, to me, I felt like, I think it was the second option would have a bike lane on the frontage road separated from traffic. One, that should help with bicyclists actually wanting to use the lane, but two, people wanting to use the bus only have to cross that one lane to get to the bus station, as opposed to presumably using to cross 4 lanes. So that was just kind of the comment that I wanted to make. My question is, in terms of priority for DOT on this project, is it going to be strictly a cost feature, or is there going to be a heavy component on trying to keep traffic flow through the area as a priority, or are we really focusing on this project as a transit and pedestrian improvement plan? To me, that's an important question, because the point of spending this money, in my mind, would be to make it more of a pedestrian-friendly and transit corridor. And my general concern is that a couple of these approaches still seem to focus too much on automobile movement through the area, as opposed to improving what is the pedestrian movement in this area. So I'll stop with that, because I realize that was a paragraph of a question.
Okay, well, let me answer your last question first, and then talk a little bit about the median guideway. So our focus is really on balance of all the users. We're trying to accommodate better. As I mentioned, we know that we have a problem with pedestrian and bicycle safety issues on there, and we're looking for ways that we can address that. As I also mentioned, we do know that it carries a lot of traffic through this area, and that's going to be true. As I mentioned, there's over 3 million square feet of new development that has already been approved. That doesn't get into how much in the future that's been proposed already. I mean, you do have hospitals, you've got the university expanding up there, you've got different businesses that are looking to add. You know, that's outside of our bailiwick to control. So we have to deal with the issues that we're presented with. I think the long-term answer to that is when we get more in the automated vehicle stage, we probably would require less lanes. We would probably have much safer roadways, because you're taking the human element out of that. Eventually, I think that's what we're going to get to and what we're going to see. In the short term, though, we can do, in midterm, we can do what we can to address those issues. And even one of the concepts has a reduction in the number of lanes, so you have less conflict. Let me talk a little bit about the median guideway. The concept that we showed here is actually what kind of Hart was looking for. And the reason they look to put it, I don't want to necessarily speak for them, but in general, I will tell you, the reason they want to put it in the middle is because the less interruption there is in the bus flow or light rail transit in the future, then the quicker that service is, right? And the more popular then it can be, that it will draw away folks that would normally drive. By putting it in the middle, you also do split, in effect, the number of lanes that pedestrians have to cross. If you put it to one side or the other, because the transit is bidirectional, right? At one point, you may only have to cross one lane, say if you want to go westbound, but if you want to go eastbound and you're on the north side of the road, well, then you still have to cross all the lanes to get to the other. So the middle design kind of splits the difference, how many lanes that you would need to cross. But certainly you are correct, 3 or 4 lanes is still a good number to have to cross to get to transit access, but it is done in other areas. And I can't speak to say, for example, New York City's safety record with running it in the middle, but they have been operating it that way for a number of decades. So I would say that there is some evidence that it does work.
One other question I had real quick is, how much do you guys go out and walk this corridor before coming up with the design about that?
Yeah, actually, we did do that. We had several of us actually went out at different times of the day to walk it. You do obviously get a very different perspective walking it than you do driving it, certainly. I think what you'll find, and maybe Vishaka is going to talk about this, that was what kind of led us to some of the short-term pedestrian and signal improvements that we're going to talk about and that have already been scheduled. We do what's called RSAs, which are safety audits when we walk along. And so we did spot things there and issues that we had. So yes, to answer your question, yes, we do that as part of the project. And also some of our short-term improvements that you're going to hear about come directly from that.
All right, I'll yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Nicole, I have a question.
I do. Would you mind going back to the very, very first slide, please?
The very first slide.
Yes, please. The time frames.
Oh, time frame. That one.
Okay, I just wanted to make a point of clarification. I just gave the very first slide. So I just wanted to make sure that we were aware that we had seen that. Also, it was stated in this presentation is concerned with left-hand turn in regards to pedestrians. I'm not sure when the last time somebody was driven. It is stupid because it's not a right-hand turn where you don't have to actually stop. So we talked about traffic calming. I absolutely will not vote today. What I'm seeing today, this is one of the most dangerous corridors. We've done nothing to eradicate. There's clearly no urban design put into it whatsoever. I'm very concerned about spending money on this for our county with our MPO. These lanes do nothing to reduce the count. You're leaving 4 lanes and making assumptions of calming or changes with all the major intersections that exist already. And then maybe the strip mall is still intact because we're in Florida, not a major city here in this corridor. With students, and this is not where hospitals are located. There's nothing but shopping all the way down. Okay, until you get to one point on the university. I'm not quite sure what we're being asked to vote on today, but this in no way, this actually makes this worse. Because now you're asking people to keep 4 lanes, making assumptions in regards to 35 miles per hour with 4 lanes to zoom back in and out of down Fowler Avenue while people try to ride bicycles and then adding, this basically turning into an Nolan booth on Roy. And I don't see anything here that shows any kind of thoughtfulness or change in regards to that corridor. I really hope this comes back to the table with something else, and it's clear that the urban designers on it. And that way, I just urban planners, people with vision, because I'm just when I look at it. And I'm not quite sure what we're being asked to vote on today.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
Yeah, so I'm glad Nicole asked that question because actually what you're being asked to vote on today is not necessarily this study. What you're being asked to vote on today is the TIP program amendments that Vishaka is going to present. So if you all want to get into that next presentation, we can certainly do that, but I'm not sure if there was a question beyond, what Nicole just asked.
Is this really where we're at with design on this right now? Is this where we're actually at? I guess that's my question. Is this what we've come to with the money we spent on design?
Well, I'll take a crack at that. So I guess what I would say is that this is the feasibility study. This is to identify potential actions that would fit, we believe, the criteria that the first slide there that we talked about, trying to balance all the different needs. The next stage of this is the PD&E, which is where actual action would get taken on what sort of design it ends up being. This is a feasibility study. As I mentioned, these are the three concepts that we came up with based on trying to balance those different needs that we have in the corridor. So the PD&E stage, we'll look at that in more detail. And as I believe I also mentioned, possibly totally different ideas could come out of that in terms of what the future of the corridor would look like.
Take those lanes down to 2 on each side. All the options keep 4 lanes.
The only thing I could say to that is that there's a large number of cars that currently use the corridor. So they don't just magically disappear if we take away lanes. So, I mean, we're trying to balance what we have. So it's you know, people can have different opinions on what those policy choices should be. And that's what the process is about, is to talk about that. So, you know, we're presenting the feasibility study, the PD&E stage. You can certainly get into that. As I mentioned, there'll be public meetings and public hearings. So none of these three have been decided. They're not designed. They're not ready for construction. This is merely the beginning of the process.
Excuse me, if I can, this is Artie Fryer. I have a question going back to what Ken mentioned about walking the streets. And I think that's good to get a perspective. My question is, are some of those perspectives, or are some of the people who walk the streets with you are disadvantaged persons, such as visually disadvantaged or in wheelchairs? Because I tend to think that they'd have a perspective that might be different from persons who have a bit more mobility. And I know that there's quite a few residential areas, and there certainly are people who are disadvantaged who walk the areas. And because there's so many exposures in terms of how people can be in danger, can you just speak to that? And do you have those perspectives incorporated in what you're deciding about?
Right. What I can tell you on that is that when we did the walkabouts, we did not have anyone that was, say, in a wheelchair or had visibility disabilities. What I can tell you is that it was staff members who have done this, who do look for things like ADA requirements, who do look for those kind of ideas. They do these safety audits on a regular basis, and so those are areas that they look at. I cannot verify that, you know, someone that actually suffered the disability was actually part of that, but we do try to take that into account when we're doing these.
So you think would there be value in having one of those persons actually, some of those people actually involved in giving you some input? And is that possible?
Yeah, sure. I think actually as part of the public input process for the PD&E stage, there would probably be some sort of design charrettes where we would ask people, the public, to participate, and that could certainly be a part of it. I believe it has been in other projects.
I think that would be something useful to present to us if you get that input.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you.
Let me just ask one question, Nicole raised. In the slide that we're looking at, it doesn't indicate that the right of way will be acquired. I think your answer to Hoyt's question was there was no right of way to be acquired. Can you clarify that for us?
Yeah, so this is basically, and I'm sorry for the misconception there, if I miscommunicated that. This is kind of a template for how all the projects go. This is not necessarily for this one specifically, but what it means to say is there are possibilities that say we have to do a signal improvement. Sometimes we have what we call corner clips, which are, you know, you might need 5 feet square certain places in order to put a signal in the proper location. Those kind of things do happen. That's not major right of way. That's at the corners. It doesn't mean taking away necessarily businesses. It's not the wholesale kind of roadway widening that we think about. For the short terms that I believe Vishaka is going to talk about, I don't believe there are any right-of-way requirements for that. What we're showing here for the medium term and the long term is, depending on the different options that might get selected during the PD&E stage, you know, if folks, well, I won't presuppose what they're going to find, but basically we're talking about smaller corner clips. We're not talking about buying whole businesses or taking out whole blocks, that kind of thing.
I think that's helpful. And I think it might be useful now to move along to the second part of this item and have Vishaka do the actual proposals for implementing, I think, some of these actions. Okay, with you, Rich.
Okay, Vishaka, are you on?
Yes, Rich, I'm on.
Okay, do you want to run your own slides?
Either way, I have mine, but it says it's locked by you. So do you want me to open it up, or you can, if you have it open, we'll go from there?
Why don't we make, Cheryl, if you could make Vishaka the presenter?
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you all for giving me this opportunity. I hope Ken is still there. If he wants, if Ken wants to explain something at any point, you're more than willing, you can more than help me. But
Okay.
today,
Sure.
presented. Thank you, Ken. I'm going to be presenting the TIP amendment and some of the short-term. I do have some of the concept diagrams that was provided to me by FDOT. So we can go over them and see if that makes sense. And so this is for the 5 intersections out of the all the intersections that Ken presented in his slides. It is for the 5 intersections are Nebraska, 15th, 22nd Street, Bruce B. Downs, and 56th Street. So as I had mentioned, this amendment is requested by FDOT. It's mainly to add bicycle pedestrian improvements along the Fowler Avenue at some of the signalized intersections as shown here. And this came as part of the University Area Multimodal Feasibility Study, short-term improvements. These locations were identified based on the high pedestrian and bike crashes at some of these locations with increased activity. And the project will be constructed using the innovative design build contract, which Ken had explained earlier. This is again mostly repetition of the same one. What Ken had said, we have identified the key corridor needs, and the improvements suggested are mostly particular to this intersections, which we identified here. The pedestrian bicycle improvements would be to tightening the curb radii, shortening the pedestrian crossing distances and giving them more opportunities, upgrading the light, reducing the speed, and so thereby reducing the potential vehicle pedestrian conflicts. It will also aim at improving the efficiency and transit flexibility in the future. These are the 5 locations. These were provided to you in the packet. But just to identify that it was Nebraska Avenue, 15th, 22nd, Bruce B. Downs, and 56th Street, all along Fowler Avenue. Ken, I believe these were some of the concepts that you wanted to explain to them. So if anybody wants further details, I will try to explain to you. At Nebraska Avenue, if you can see on the image to the right, it will mainly help by reducing the crossing distances, tightening the curb radii in all the 4 corners. Thereby, it will help to cross. Also, some of the other improvements are replacing or relocating bike lane end markings, replacing the pavement markings in the northwest, and also relocating bicycle racks in the northeast corner. Bike lane manhole and curb extensions will also be adjusted. So those are some of the identified improvements at this intersection. At Fowler and 15th Street, some of the improvements are existing, are tightening the curb radii. Thereby, it'll help it'll help the pedestrians and the bicyclists. The third intersection what was identified was Fowler at 22nd Street, where the median nose, if you can notice in the image, the median nose will be extended as part of the proposed design, and it will also help to the pavement crossings, pavement markings are updated, and the curb radii at the 4 intersections are also tightened. So it also includes installing pedestrian detectors at the median nodes. This is the 4th intersection that was identified in the study. There are major, some of the major changes here are upgrading the median nose, increase markings, changing the pedestrian crossings, increasing the tightening the curb radii. If you can notice on the north, I mean, at most of the 4 corners, you can see that it helps to, by changing the curb radii, it helps for giving the pedestrian islands also more space for refuge islands. And also some of the other upgrades would be to install the 4 new light poles, which will help for pedestrian, for noticing the pedestrians. So the realigned crosswalks also will be illuminated, and which gives better visibility for pedestrians and bicyclists. This is the 5th intersection at 56th Street, which has also similar design concepts. In this one, the curb radii is further changed, allowing the vehicles to turn slowly. It will also increase the size of the pedestrian refuge islands, making the crossings smaller, and brings the crosswalks a shorter distance, which helps the pedestrians to cross. At some of the 4 corners, also it includes removing existing sidewalk and upgrading the crossings. Also, lighting is included in this intersection, upgrading the lightings and illuminating the realigned crosswalks. So these were some of the proposed designs, and like Ken said, these are for the short-term improvements, mainly for pedestrian bicycle activity, and this will be evaluated further in the PD&E. With this, I bring to you the comparative report. This will help you to understand what are the changes and where the funds are added. If you can notice that the construction funds are added in 2021, and these are some of the funding categories, bringing the total to 1.74 million. And this is part of the Vision Zero project for the intersection improvements for a total project length of 3.5 miles along Fowler Avenue. With this, I request if the committee can approve the TIP amendment and recommend approval to the MPO board. I can take any questions at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Chaka, for the presentation. On the slide where you have Bruce Downs intersecting Fowler, and then you have the other slide, I think it's 15, and Fowler. One slide you're removing the island, the other slide you're adding an island, a crosswalk island. Why is that? If it works for one side of the street or one of the street, what was the factor of removing it from the other?
Is this, I'm sorry if I couldn't hear you clearly, but were you mentioning at the Bruce B. Downs Avenue intersection?
Correct. The proposed design is that you're adding the crosswalk design, or excuse me, the crosswalk items, right?
Uh-huh.
And on the Fowler at 15, I believe you're removing it, or 22nd Street. It was the previous,
Right. I think he's talking about the nose. The noses are extended
Yes.
across the crosswalk.
Okay.
This is the Fowler at 22nd Street. I think each one is designed specifically based on the pedestrian and bicycle activity. These came out of the safety action plan. So Ken, is there any further explanation that you would like to provide?
Yeah, I think if you go back to the one at Bruce B. Downs, I think another thing that they take into account, the designers, is the amount of truck traffic and larger vehicles. And I believe the reason that they didn't have the noses extended at Bruce B. Downs was because of truck turning radii. But that is something that could be looked at definitely more in the PD&E. You know, if we go out and do other things. This is a short-term improvement, so I believe that's what the potential reason was there.
Can you go to the slide with Fowler and 15?
He's looking for the Fowler and 15th slide. There you go.
Okay, so I thought those were items, but okay. No, that works for me. Thank you.
Yeah, that's actually a design, just to let you know, that's a design that we're trying to get at more of these kind of intersections, because it does provide a little bit more of a refuge for pedestrians if they do have to wait and cross in 2 stages.
Yeah, can you actually go back to Fowler and Nebraska just so I can make sure?
Is this the one?
Okay, perfect. Then my question's answered. Thank you.
Okay, are there further questions of Mr. Shaka about this implementing? Ed, you're recognized.
Yeah, if you could go to the Fowler at Bruce B. Downs. And,
yes.
Okay, and I think this would also apply at 56th Street. But southbound on Bruce B. Downs, if there are pedestrians trying to get from the, let me see, the northwest corner to the southwest corner, and they have a pedestrian phase, but unfortunately that right turn, channelized right turn from southbound to westbound, sometimes, I mean, I see this commonly, pedestrians are trying to cross there, and the cars that are making that sort of free right really don't pay that much attention to the pedestrians. And I wondered if there's any thought to including a post-mounted traffic signal that would control those channelized movements, so that when there's a pedestrian phase, that cars stop and allow pedestrians to cross from the island to the corner.
Okay, there was a suggestion, right? I mean, there was something to be considered, correct?
Right. I mean, that's just a suggestion.
If you don't mind, Vishaka, too. Those are, and I apologize, you guys didn't have the most up-to-date version of my slides. We had a couple of slides that talked about, these are called urban smart channel islands, and they actually are a little bit different. They're a little sharper, so that it forces the vehicle to go slower around in that right turn, in exactly the situation you're talking about. It's hard maybe to see on this slide, but on the existing, you can see how it's much more rounded, and it allows people to kind of do that rolling right.
Right.
And then on the right hand, on the proposed design, you can see that's a little sharper, and the island actually comes out a little bit further.
Right. Okay.
So one of the ideas there is to have people, you know, there is right turn on red, you know, and there is people do get green lights, and they can make that right there. We're trying to slow them down. It also changes the angle at which the crosswalk goes out to the island, and it's also a little larger, so it gives pedestrians more of a refuge there, more of a chance to be seen. Whether or not we can put specific pedestrian, you know, kind of based signals there is something that we can look at. I don't believe it's part of the current design, but I can check on that for you. And if it isn't, if we have time, we might be able to add something like that.
Yeah, I was actually suggesting like a post-mounted traffic signal there, so that when you're in a pedestrian phase, that right turn channelized lane would get a red ball.
I'll have to check with the signal guys on that. That's
okay.
I'm going to say that's outside of my area.
Okay.
But we can certainly bring it up to them.
Okay.
I have a question also.
Christine, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm glad Ed brought up those, the channelized right turns, because I have concerns with them too. I'm glad that they are being made, being redesigned such that they will slow traffic, but I wonder if we have the ability to move the crosswalks and perhaps create a raised pedestrian crossing there, so that cars will slow down, because it looks like the modification of the curvature here and on the other ones is further down the loop where motorists will be slowing, right. They won't be slowing too far in advance of that pedestrian crossing. And it's human nature when any of us is driving, we are looking only where our threat might emerge. In other words, we're going to be looking over our left shoulder to see oncoming traffic. And that renders the pedestrians invisible who might be on the right side of our vehicle, or the passenger side in that scenario. So I wonder if a raised crosswalk and moving the crosswalk further to the north in the proposed design image would be possible. And I also want to request that lead pedestrian intervals be included in the designs here. If y'all don't remember what the LPIs are, I'd be happy to repeat what that is.
Actually, I believe the OPIs are part of the improvements.
Very good. Okay.
As to your question about the raised crosswalk, I would have to check on that because I'm not sure that's currently part of our design manual. It is an issue, though. I completely agree with you. Even if it was graded a little bit to get people to slow down and to help the crosswalks, it's also a great idea for ADA requirements also, because then there's less of a drop down. It's an even. That is, I think, maybe something that we can look at. Again, I'm not the roadway designer. I'm an urban planner, so I can check into that for you. But those are ideas that are being used in other places, and we're seeing them implemented more often.
Thank you. As I understand it, stuff being in the manuals, and I am not the expert. I'm not a traffic engineer, but I have heard from many of them who tell me that at the close of any manual or guidebook about what can be done, there is notation that the designers can apply discretion in a context related instance, and that, where we have a high crash corridor, we definitely have to pull out all the guts that we have to make changes. So I just hope that we can. And the other, I just want to remark, I don't know if any of you have had the recent pleasure or displeasure of being in an island, these pedestrian islands. I mean, I think island is a great word, but honestly, someone standing there perhaps with their bike is only a few feet from trucks moving at 50 miles an hour. I mean, it's I think this is great for short term, but I think it is a far, far cry from what we hope we can ultimately achieve for pedestrian comfort and safety. Thanks.
Thank you. Rick Fernandez is recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say I can't vote to support this as far as promoting it to the motherboard, the MPO board, but I just want to make a couple of quick comments as to why, in case my vote seems unusual to anyone. And for those who were kind enough to be here and make the presentations, I respect what you've done, but as I'm sitting here watching this and listening to it, what I'm hearing is a bike ped adverse design culture. I'm looking at the picture here in front of me right now of Fowler and Bruce B. Downs Avenue. I look at the existing intersection and the proposed design, and quite frankly, I don't see a relevant difference between the two in terms of the safety of those who are not encased within metal boxes. I take particular note of the term refuge island. Yeah, I mean, it's a refuge island because the pedestrians, anybody that's not in a car needs some type of protection to get through this environment. I mean, you might, from a PR perspective, you might come up with a different term of art than refuge island because it makes it sound like a war zone. And that's exactly what it looks like. Also, there was a comment earlier in response, I think, to something that Nikki Rice said. I wasn't quite sure because of the audio, but the question of the number of lanes that we have here. And there was a comment made by the FDOT representative that the cars aren't just going to go away. Well, you know, if we have an effective transit modality available to us, be it BRT, be it light rail, be it bike ped, that's the purpose of those transit modalities, is exactly that, to get those cars off the road. And we should be looking at what we're doing here in a holistic way. If the transit modalities are effective and people actually make use of them, there will be fewer vehicles on these roads. That's the purpose. And we should be able to start making motion toward less wide thoroughfares that are more pedestrian friendly and safe, or we'll never have any chance whatsoever of accomplishing our Vision Zero goals. So in any event, that's why I'm not going to vote to support this, but I thank you for your time in presenting.
Thank you, Rick. Other comments or questions on the presentation? Is it action item? I'm sorry, Holly.
Trying to get it in the camera.
Peripheral vision is off.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we've been talking a lot about the refuge island. Is my understanding correct? My understanding was that the islands were always less preferred for pedestrians and safety. Is that an incorrect presumption that I have?
I'm not sure if that was to me or not. I'm not sure I heard you.
Let me repeat the question. So my general understanding previously was that if the choice was between and my terminology may not be correct in terms of the design, but if the choice is between a 90-degree right turn or having a right turn like is here in the design with an island, that the island was always the less preferred option for pedestrians. Is that correct, or am I wrong in understanding?
I'm not aware that one is considered the preferred or less preferred. I would say that the inclusion of islands depends a lot on how big the intersection is, right? So where you have, say, a two-lane street coming, two-lane roads coming together, you can have very tight radii because you're not talking about that wide of streets entering it, right? You also don't have as many trucks. Part of the design, and we're changing, these ideas, is that you had the big right-hand sweeping turns because you wanted trucks to be able to. A right turn is the hardest for a large vehicle to make. Actually, lefts are fairly easy for them to make. Rights are much tougher. So, the original design concepts where you had these big kind of sweeping radii with wide, curbs for that. We're pulling those in on all of these examples. We're shortening the radii so that we can not only shorten the distance that the pedestrian has to go across, but utilize some of the space that's out there with an island, so it is a little safer for them to wait on. I would say that the reason that they're also called refuge islands, although Mr. Fernandez's point is very well taken, they probably deserve a better name, but that's the one engineers gave them, so that's what we use. They're really there. I guess their original concept for that was some people, we allow the pedestrian light to go for a certain time in order so that people can cross from one side to the other. People do, however, come to the walk light late, right? Not from the very beginning. They'll come at different points of it. So the refuge island was, the concept there is, it gave them somewhere to wait temporarily in case they couldn't make, right? They couldn't make the crossing all at once during the walk signal. So it's not a preferable situation. We would rather that people could make it all the way across, but we have no control over when people arrive at the walk light and decide to go across. In a lot of other designs that we have, you'll see much wider medians so that space, I believe the other, Ms. Rice brought up about you can't even put a bicycle, right? You wouldn't be able to stand with it. We have other medians in other locations on Fowler, actually, where they're much wider than that. And so we're cognizant of that. We try to retrofit where we can those type of designs.
So has there been any consideration to, for example, this design, I could feedback a little bit on Ed's point. If this were a 90-degree right turn and the island were eliminated, what is to prevent the installation of the no turn on red digital signs that can be activated and deactivated like you can see at a railroad track? So, for example, the pedestrian signal on, the no turn on red could be illuminated, and if the pedestrian signal was at a red, then it could be turned off. I mean, is there any consideration of something like that installed at any of these intersections?
I think that is something that could be looked at. Again, I would have to defer on the answer to that to people who are traffic signal designers. That's not really my expertise.
Okay, my last question is, I don't see any upgrades with the traffic signals. It appears in the picture that the design still includes the use of span wire signals, which functionally less good than mast arms. And I'm sure you're probably aware that many states in their manual on uniform traffic control devices ban their use. And so I'm wondering if there's going to be any upgrades to the signals in that area, specifically because driver visibility of signals obviously helps them stopping when they should, which helps pedestrian safety. That's one of my concerns often with these intersections is there's poor visibility of the signals. And I'm sure if you've been out west or in other jurisdictions, there's a better job of more signal heads on the near side of the intersection, left turn signals on pedestal mounts on the far corners of the intersection. We don't seem to do a very good job here of having enough signals in the visual for drivers that when there's heavy trucks or there's obstruction. One of the issues with pedestrian safety is drivers not seeing a red signal and entering into the intersection when they shouldn't. Right. So, any comment on that?
And maybe if it's shocking knows, I'm not sure whether the mast arms are included or not.
I can. So this is Alex Henry, FUT staff. Again, I was involved a little more in the concept development. So we did look at that. Converting to mast arm is something that we prefer to do for the reasons that you stated. It's an engineering best practice in urban areas. However, kind of the intent of this project was to kind of generate a relatively low cost and easy to roll out in the short term bundle of improvements where we could kind of get out there under $2 million and do a quick low bid design build to kind of get some pedestrian safety improvements in the ground as quickly as we could. So when we looked at replacing the mast arms at some of these larger intersections, that was really going to likely double the cost of some of these of the totality of the project, which would kind of relate to that would inhibit our ability to kind of get this out so quickly. So I think that's something that we'd be looking at in the longer term, and it is definitely something that the department prefers. However, just in the sake of kind of getting the quickest and the most effective safety improvements on the ground as we can to start improving conditions in the near term, we elected to kind of leave the span wiring with these concepts, make the geometric improvements, and something we'll be looking to come back to as we come back with some of the larger projects that Kim was mentioning in his presentation.
Thank you for that. My last comment to that would be, and I realize this may be outside of your control, but certain design upgrades in terms of the general planning, for example, not continuing to install span wire signals and not continuing to use islands where not appropriate would probably save some money in the long term. So I appreciate the department's desire to get this out quickly to improve safety. And I certainly think that's a noble goal, but I would just comment that I would hope that there'd be some consideration of changing these less desirable practices, because I keep seeing them, I keep seeing new ones, and that's something that I hope will cease over the long term. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mark. Other questions or comments?
Yes, I have a follow-up comment, if I may, Mr. Chair. Thanks. Alex Henry, I'm so glad to hear your voice on this on this meeting. I wondered about. I don't see any reason that a motorist would stop on these right turn sweeps, and I'm especially concerned with the upper left corner of the proposed design because it looks like that's a trail access location. So I wonder, Alex, what are your thoughts, and is it possible? I understand we can only do what we can with our money and bandwidth, but can we do elevated crosswalks or anything to slow motorists before they are just about where the pedestrian would be standing in that corner?
Yeah, that's a good question, and unfortunately, yeah, I would have to defer to our roadway people before I can answer that definitively. You know,
Okay.
it's not something that we have done before in an application, but I know that it's something that is kind of getting traction around the state. It's a potential countermeasure for situations like that. So it's something that we can look into definitely and see if there's still potential to incorporate as part of this project. Something else that we've talked about kind of since these concepts have been rolled out was implementing, and we're still looking into whether or not we can do it because it'd be kind of a experimental treatment, but where you see the kind of the striped out areas on the curb radius now, like on the northeast and the northwest side, that was originally proposed due to truck turning templates. However, we're kind of exploring the feasibility of installing like a truck apron similar to what you see on a roundabout. So you'd get a better benefit for your typical driver, you know, someone in a sedan that doesn't have quite wide of a wheel path. You know, they would have still have a tighter curb radius, but you'd be able to accommodate those truck turning movements as well, which would, you know, provide an additional safety benefit. So you know, we're still looking at things like that as we move into the design build process, and you know, that's definitely something that, point taken, and something that we can explore further.
Thank you. I would say that that gored area, my prediction is that the paint's worn off about, you know, the third day after this installation. So if you have the opportunity to do a beveled curb, I just strongly, in fact, I won't be voting in favor of advancing this until we know, you know, what else can be done, because it's just falling short in my opinion. So thanks, Alex. That sounds like a great option.
Okay, are there other comments? I don't have everyone on my screen, so if you have a question or a comment, speak up.
Mr. Chair, this is Titus. I have a question. Yep.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Listen, I agree with everyone, you know, that this isn't like an ideal, obviously, endpoint. At a minimum, I would think that there needs to be signage, or we need to hear that there's some kind of signage maybe warning pedestrians. I look at both sides of it. Yeah, we need to slow down the traffic, maybe stop the traffic, but also some signage warning pedestrians, hey, look left. You know, I don't know if we should be assuming that everybody was told to look both ways before they cross the street. So, you know, but yeah, this is definitely not a complete solution. I appreciate you reframing it, that it is a short-term temporary solution with limited funds, but I agree that more needs to be done. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we've reached the point where it would be good to act on this action item. The request for us is to recommend to the MPO board approval of the CIP amendment. One brief comment on that is that this is an effort to utilize the to make some improvements. But we've raised a number of questions here in this committee, which I'm hoping we need to get back to some responses. Most significantly, there seems to be a concern about the safety of the pedestrians, both in their access to the pedestrian island and also to the standing or positioning of the pedestrians on the refuge islands themselves. So with that said, I'd like to ask for a vote on this. Rich, are you agree to accept only no votes, or would you like to do a roll call?
Yeah, we can do it by voice vote. Somebody needs to make a motion and it needs to be seconded.
Your motion.
I'm, s- can anyone repeat what what the chair has said or summarize it? Because I couldn't hear most of it.
No, not very much.
Okay. I'll accept the motion to approve the CIP amendment and maybe the full report in my comments.
I'm not getting any of it.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the CIP amendment as presented? Do I hear a motion? Not hearing a motion. Richard, am I being heard?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I think Ms. Acosta was asking for, you made a statement before calling for the motion.
Yeah, I heard a question. I'm just not sure that if you go back through it again and be heard properly. So, quite frankly, you have a motion.
Well, yeah, so if this is procedurally correct, I would like the motion to table moving this forward pending answers to our question. I would like the department to come back and answer the outstanding questions. So I would move to table this until such time that they come back and answer these questions.
Okay, we have a motion to table any action. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Christina
Costa seconds that we table.
Christina Costa second. Any discussion on the motion to table? Any guidance from Rick or from the secretary before we take the vote?
So if I can jump in, I mean, I think you can certainly make the motion to table it, and we will reflect that to the MPO board. They may or may not choose to act on it. So just be aware.
Is there anything else that we need to do to ensure that they understand why we're tabling it? I mean, we're saying the safety improvements for pedestrians are insufficient in its current state, I believe. So is that, will they know that we're saying we're tabling it because we don't feel like it's good enough yet? Is that going to be clearly conveyed?
I think Hoyt's motion for the tabling had to do with receiving the answer back to the questions raised by the committee. And that would be the answer he would need in order to move this forward.
Okay. And so the question is, I want to make sure that the questions are very clear. The questions we're asking are, what else can be done to improve the safety of the intersections? And then the more specific ones we asked individually.
I understand your point and the other comments made by the committee. I'll be happy to include that extra explanation as part of my oral report to the MPO board. Rick Richmond, do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. And just to comment on Rich Clarendon's, are you saying that there's possibly a financial or fiscal calendar involved with if we did table this, that the MPO or wants to move this funding forward and delays this or what have you? Is that kind of what you're saying or reading that?
Well, no, not necessarily looking at it from a funding perspective, but the board, you all advise the board. Other committees, notably the TAC, also advised the board. The TAC did vote to recommend it to the MPO board, so they may take that into account.
Okay. Any
other discussion on the motion to table? Do you want to take a roll call vote for this, or simply record the no, or the?
Is it appropriate, excuse me, is it appropriate to make another motion at this time or after the vote?
The appropriate to amend the motion to table? I don't think it's amendment.
No, not to make an amendment, to make a motion to pass it.
Separate. That would be a substitute motion. And I guess I would suggest holding off and see how this goes.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and do a roll call vote on the motion to table any action. We take a few more minutes to take it before. So if I can ask the clerk to call the roll. The motion is to table for action on the recommendation to approve the tip that we would forward to the MPO board.
Rich, could you repeat that motion?
Motion is to table the action on the recommendation for the tip improvement.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, just so the clerk gets it, what I heard was the motion is to table the item until FDOT comes back with answers to some of the questions that were asked relative to safety.
Okay, Bill Roberts,
Yes.
Rick Fernandez,
No,
you do not want to table.
I don't want table. I want up or down on the actual action request.
Okay. Stephen Hollenkamp.
Yes.
Hoyt Prindle,
Yes.
Don Skelton Jr.,
Yes.
Barbara Kennedy Gibson,
Yes.
Amy Espinosa,
Yes.
Christina Costa,
Yes.
Vivian Handy,
No.
Artie Fryer,
No.
Edward Merjensky,
Yes.
David Bailey,
Yes.
Jeff Lucas,
Yes.
Cliff Reese,
Yes.
Camilo Soto, Terrence Trott,
No.
Nicole Rice,
No.
Rick Richmond,
No.
Letitia Walker, Alexis Bobak.
Yes.
Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 no's and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 yeses.
If I count also, the motion to table is approved. All right. We look forward to getting those responses back from the FDOT, hopefully by our next meeting. And I will submit the meeting of the fifth of the committee during my report to the MPO board of their next. Moving along on our agenda, that concludes our action items. The next item is attendance review. Rich Clarendon is going to guide us through.
Yes, thank you. Can you see my screen now?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, hold on.
Rich, you have control of the screen now.
Yep. Okay, now can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right, let me See if I can move down here. Sorry, I'm having difficulty seeing my own screen. Okay, I don't know if you can see all of this. However, I did compile attendance records for the last year, which is something, according to our bylaws, we are supposed to do just to confirm attendance. The good news is that none of the folks who are present are in danger of being bounced off the committee for lack of attendance. There is a member, Camilo Soto, who has missed 3 consecutive meetings, and could be his membership could be rescinded by the MPO for that reason. My intention is to reach out to Camilo and find out his intention as to whether or not he wants to continue on the committee. But if not, then that would create a vacancy. The other thing that I think was talked about earlier in the meeting is, terms that are expiring. This table also shows terms as according to our records, and there are a number of folks whose terms are up as we go through 2021. And if you want to be replaced, either let me or the person who appointed you know that you would like to be reappointed. So that's basically it. There's no action necessary on this item.
Rich, who is the one that had like 10 straight absences? Are they no longer on the board?
Yeah, let me go there. Hold on a second.
That would be Sky White.
Yeah, Sky resigned back in October, November. So that created a vacancy.
But you said she resigned?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I didn't hear that. Thanks.
Rich, I'm sorry, Chair, may I be recognized?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Question for Rich, or request, I guess. I don't know what's been done in the past, but in the future, if a member of the committee resigns, creating a vacancy, would it be possible for MPO staff to notify us that that has happened? I mean, I didn't realize that Sky had resigned. That creates a vacancy that now Commissioner Overmeyer will need to fill. And that would have been something nice to know 2 months ago. So I don't know how else I would know that, were it not for the fact that we would secure that kind of information from MPO staff. Is that doable?
Sure, we can do that. And just as a point of information, David might want to talk to this, but Commissioner Overman has reached out to us and wants to appoint David Bailey, or reappoint him actually, to the committee. He was originally appointed by Ken Hagan, who's no longer on the MPO, but Commissioner Overman wants to have him continue. So that should happen at the next MPO meeting. But in the future, if you'd like to know when people resign, that certainly is something we can communicate. The other thing I would say is that we try to maintain active rosters that are posted to our website, and so that pertains to any committee, but particularly this one. And we do update that from time to time to show where we have vacancies.
Thank you, Rich. Barbara, do you have a question?
Yes, Rich, for the school board, will there be a person who sits on the MPO, and who is that going to be?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that question. So the school board has appointed Jessica Vaughn to be their representative on the MPO board.
Okay, thank you. I'll contact her.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other questions about the attendance report?
No, if I may, it's kind of related.
Go ahead.
Rich, I just wanted to know, I think a while back I had inquired into maybe having a member position for like first responder or law enforcement or something. I feel we don't get enough of that perspective when it comes to enforcement or somebody who's actually responding to traffic accidents, whether it be law enforcement or an emergency, EMS or something like that. If it's a possibility, I'd like to explore that further, please.
Okay, well, probably warrants a little more discussion, but I would just simply say that, this is a citizens advisory committee. We do have slots for law enforcement folks on some of our other committees, like the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and I believe Livable Roadways also has a slot for law enforcement personnel and first responders. So, but we can certainly take that up. It would require a change to the bylaws if that was something that was desired.
Okay. Probably no further questions on the attendance review. We will move into the old business section of our agenda. The first item there is the Plant City Transit Plan follow-up. Shocker, you still with us?
Yes, Chair, I'm still here. So if I may start, just wanted to let you know that back in October, November, December, when I presented the Plan City study to this board, they requested that we delve deep into some of the goals, which were, I just want to repeat that. The goals we identified as part of the study were to implement useful transit to people who need it the most. The second goal was to incentivize downtown development. And the third was to connect Plan City to Tampa and possibly Lakeland in the future. So with these three goals being proposed, the CAC committee requested that we take a deeper look into how those goals would help to incentivize how the second goal would be served, in particular, incentivizing the downtown. So we had to go back. Like the study had actually looked into it. We looked into the Plan City Comprehensive Plan and identified the sections where it mentioned how it would help to incentivize the downtown. So these are some of the key points that we identified. And based on the comp plan, we identified that there is actually a Midtown redevelopment project, and a Midtown development plan was proposed. That was developed in 2007 to increase the office and retail space in downtown and identify it as an urban character. So I have noticed, note that this Plan City's vision for a pedestrian-friendly mixed-use community would be, with a projected population, would be satisfied based on the redevelopment project. The city has already invested more than 4.5 million in improvements for the area, which is roughly 15 acres for the redevelopment, and that's in place already. Some of them has already been built, and the others are still coming up. The second the second point that we identified was a Plan City Community Redevelopment Plan, which was adopted way back in 1984, which will also help to incentivize downtown development. The plan calls for a few, increased office and commercial activity by attracting new businesses in downtown. Also, as part of this, the future development will be guided by the CRA, which is appointed by the City Commission. So these two will help to to increase the density and the intensity in downtown. Further, a third point which was identified was the mixed use gateway project, which was identified along the James L. Redmond Parkway. And this also identifies some of the corridors that can be served with transit, and which are part of some of the routes that we proposed in the study. A fourth one was the South Florida Hospital Overlay District, which is also identified in the comprehensive plan. That helps to encourage uses along Alexander Street, Baker Street, Reynolds Street, and uses predominantly supporting the hospital, like doctors' offices, pharmacies, and other uses. So all these will help to support increased density, and which will help to increase the transit and support transit in downtown Plant City. With that, I did also write a small report, which will go, which the piece of the article will actually go into the report as an appendix, and that will help to identify this particular goal. If there's any question, we can take it now.
Other questions from the committee on this update? Yes, please.
Hey, Vishaka, thank you for doing this extra step for us. I just wanted to point out two things. I'll be approving this, and this is all great. The South Florida Baptist Hospital is moving 5 to 10 miles northeast, and so our long-term future, that won't really be a part of that hospital in the overlay district. Will be moving. And secondly, it says, I'm not sure if you said this, or it says that on this slide, the projected population is 72,000 by 2021. I think that may be the projection for 2045. But besides that, thanks again.
Thank you, Stephen. This was based on the Plant City Midtown Redevelopment website. I will take a look into it, make sure that is correct. If the numbers were wrong, I'm sorry about that. To answer your first question, the hospital, we did notice that the hospital was moving, but I'm not sure if it is the entire hospital or just increase of some facilities. We do not know I do not know more details about the plan, but this came up only towards the later part of the study to our notice. So I did discuss with Plant City staff and also Planning Commission regarding that. And if there is anything of that nature, that will have to be looked into it deeper when the route planning process. I mean, during the route planning stages. But currently, this plan was just to identify possible routes as of existing and identified future developments.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you, Vishaka. Christine,
Sure.
Hi, I had a little trouble hearing you, Stephen, so you might want to chime in as an answer on this. But Vishaka, thank you for this additional research. I am wondering, in the redevelopment plan that is frankly very, very old, did you get any sense of the increased development for residential that is being aimed at? I think it's great to connect Plant City with the city of Tampa. That's very important. But I think the job base in the city of Tampa renders it more likely that people will reside in the Plant City area and have that fabulous small town livability, but then be able to easily commute for work via transit into the city of Tampa. So I'm just wondering, did you get a sense at all for the increased density where it pertains to residential? And Stephen, you may know more or have had something to say about that.
Stephen, do you want to step up, or I can answer part of that question?
Interesting, so I'll say, goal, vision for Plant City over the next 30 years is a lot more residents downtown. Actually getting those, as a small developer in downtown Plant City, I'm working hard at unit by unit And there's many developers also doing so many projects that come and go, and there's many on the docket right now. So I think even though there's not a lot of residents currently downtown, there's maybe 30 apartments in our small, quaint, awesome downtown. Over the next 30 years, there's plans to grow that dramatically. This Midtown plan would add, I think phase one would add 400 units. There was another development that would add another maybe 250. I don't know if those will still go through with COVID. They were still in planning stages. There's another development that's adding 40 in our downtown that was approved a couple months ago. So the plans are there. And so I think when we're thinking long-term transit, we should include downtown as a residential hub, even if today there's not a whole lot.
Thank you, Stephen. Actually, Christine, just would like to add that this is also identified as the goal, as one of the goals in Plan City comprehensive plan to promote a mixed use residential, commercial, and retail space center. So that will be that, and there is a policy to support that. So that's what I based it off, but I was mainly looking at the commercial and the retail activity in the downtown core.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Welcome to this update. We appreciate it. No action necessary. We appreciate you getting back to us with the information.
Thank you all.
We'll move on. Our next item is the nomination to fill the vacancy for a person under 30. Rich Clarendon, again, yours.
Yeah, I know time, we're way overdue, so I'm going to make this very quick. The bylaws say that you all have the prerogative to nominate somebody to fill the slot for a person to be filled by a person under the age of 30. We did promote this, and we got a number of folks who met that qualification. I did send those around. And you all, some of you, several of you participated in ranking those applicants. And Zafira, Beatrice Zafira was the one who got the most, she was the top ranked applicant is what I'm trying to say. And her application is in the backup material, but just very quickly, if you didn't see that, she is a legislative assistant to Janet Cruz, state senator. She lives in Tampa and has a keen interest in urban planning. She would like to pursue a degree, a graduate degree in that field. And she has a very keen interest in transportation planning. So just a very quick thumbnail as to who's being recommended, but it would take a motion on the part of the committee to have her nominated to the MPO board.
I think we still have a quorum here present, Rich, so I would accept the motion to approve that recommendation to the MPO board.
I'll so move. This is Ed.
Mr. Fernandez moves.
I'll second. Rick Richmond.
I'm sorry, Rick? Rich?
Yes, Rick Richmond.
Yes.
Thank you.
Rick Fernandez made the motion.
No, I'm sorry, Chair. I did not make that motion. Ed made the motion. I didn't want this to go forward. So that's Ed's motion.
My
Right.
thing. I'm not on screen.
You were recording and having made the motion.
It wasn't me.
It was Ed.
No, I did. This is Ed Majewski. I moved. I moved.
And we have a second. Okay, I don't have everybody on my screen, so I can't see you. Is there any opposition? Let's just take the no votes. Is there anyone who votes no to move this recommendation to the MPO board?
Chair, could we have discussion on this before we take a vote?
You can certainly have discussion. So,
Thank you. I'm going to oppose the motion, and not because I have anything against this applicant, but for reasons that I stated earlier. I believe as a committee, since this is one of the at-large positions, we should be reviewing not just the person who somehow managed to come to the top of the list as a result of some individuals making comments offline. I don't know what anybody else recommended, nor do I know who the other top three candidates were in the recommendation list. In the past, we've had our applicants actually appear before the committee and make presentations if they wish to, make themselves known to us, so we have an opportunity to make a judgment on them as candidates. This is an important position representing an important demographic in our community, and I don't think we've had sufficient opportunity to vet everyone that's on offer. At the very least, I think we ought to have the top three and have them invited to come and talk to us at the next meeting so we can vote. And for that reason, I would oppose this nomination at this point. And as a procedural matter, this was not noted in the agenda as an action item today. I think it would be inappropriate to move it forward as an action item now.
well, I'll apologize if you did not get the opportunity to review the top three.
I cannot hear him, Rich.
You cannot hear me?
Whoever was talking.
I'm sorry, I cannot hear the chair.
I was just apologizing to Vic Fernandez if he didn't get the opportunity to review the three candidates. Is there any other discussion on the motion to move this recommendation to the MPO board? Corey Prendle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So now that Rick has made his comment, I seem to recall that we did discuss in one of the past meetings about bringing these applicants in to speak to the committee. I mean, is there some kind of time concern that prevents us from doing that? Because I tend to agree with Rick that this is an important position. And while the person being put forward is the person that I had number one on my list, based on resumes, I would be interested to hear from these individuals. So is there no way for us to do that at the next meeting?
I'll defer that to Rich Clarendon, and I'm open to the pleasure of the committee.
It's up to the committee. I mean, we've done it both ways. I guess I would suggest, if you wish, and the committee felt so inclined, we could invite the top three. Just for the record, the other two who came in second and third were Knudsen and Lamb, Eric Lamb. So, I mean, I could ask all three of them to appear. I would say, though, that in the past, it's been a little awkward having all three appear, or let's say more than one candidate appear at the same time. And it can get a little, in the past, in any way, has been perceived by some as being more of a grilling than an opportunity to invite or to express interest. So that's my only comment, but it's really up to the committee as to what you'd like to do.
I'd like to make a comment, please.
Okay, who was that one comment?
This is Terrence.
Terrence, go ahead.
Yeah. So the email, there was email communication sent out, and it was made. It seemed clear to me that this was the interview process that we were going to undertake this time. with that being said, whoever responded, responded, and whoever didn't, and there's a result. And I think that's what we should live by. Not every interview has to have a in-person component to it, I don't think. We went off a little resume bio and made a decision.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Any other comments? My view is that bringing all three of the candidates in is probably not only logistically difficult, but it leads to difficult moments. I have no objection to asking the preferred candidate to appear with the committee and express her views. Or I think Rick makes a good point, this is not agendaed as an action item, although we can certainly take action on it. So, with that said, is there a motion to move this recommendation to the MPO, or is there an alternative motion?
I already made a motion. I already made a motion. There's a motion on the floor that was seconded.
Yeah.
Ed has made the motion to move the recommendation. The MPO has been seconded. Any further discussion? Rich, do you want to do a roll call or simply register the opposition?
Excuse me, Rich, can you please repeat what the chair has said to reiterate the motion that we're voting on now? I want to make sure I hear it clearly.
Sure. So the motion is to recommend the top ranked candidate, Beatrice Zafra, to fill the under 30 representative on the CAC.
Okay.
I have a point of order, Chair. Just confirmation, please. Do we have a quorum of 7 present in the room?
Yes, we do.
So do you want to call the roll then, Mr. Chairman?
I think so. Let's go ahead and do the roll call.
Okay. This is to fill the 30, the under 30 representative.
Right.
Bill Roberts.
Yes.
Ricardo Fernandez.
No.
Stephen Hollenkamp.
Yes.
Hoyt Prindle.
Yes.
Don Skelton Jr.
Yes.
Barbara Kennedy Gibson.
Yes.
Amy Espinosa.
Yes.
Christine Acosta.
Yes.
Vivian Handy. Vivian, are you there?
She may have left.
Okay, Artie Fryer.
Yes.
Edward Merjensky.
Yes.
David Bailey.
Yes.
Jeff Lucas.
Yes.
Cliff Reese.
Yes.
Camilo Soto, he's not here. Terrence Trott.
Yes.
Nicole Rice. Nicole.
I'm not sure she's on the telephone. CAC.
Is Nicole Rice there?
No.
Okay, sorry. Rick Richmond.
Yes.
Letitia Walker. And Alexis Bobak.
Yes.
Okay, we have 1 no and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 yeses.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. Motion passes. We'll pass this recommendation on for approval. Rich, do you think it would be Consider to invite the candidate to schedule to appear with us at the next meeting, or will she be a member by then?
Well, she might be a member by then.
Okay, that's good. Next item on our agenda is the federal certification review of the public comment period.
Yeah, so this is, I'll just be very quick. Every 4 years, we are treated by review of the MPO by our friendly overseers at the federal government level. That would be FHWA and Federal Transit Administration folks. In the past, they've come down for a 2-day look-see, and I really mean they look at everything. This year, it's going to be a little different. It's going to be all done virtually. A half day on the 21st of January in the morning. There will be an opportunity to receive public comment during that meeting, as well as written comments can be submitted before and after. There will be a public, how should I say, a social media blast, and it'll be publicized in other forms. But certainly your comments as CAC members would be much appreciated, either good, bad, or indifferent. I think the feds want to know how we're doing. And of course, we never do anything without, giving the public an opportunity to weigh in. So again, January 21st in the morning. And if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. Thanks.
Thank you, Rich. So I'll encourage CAC members to participate in that comment process. I would add not an agenda item, but a quick report that we have reached out to the school board regarding the issue that came before us earlier, a couple of meetings ago, regarding the location of public schools and the lack of adequate transportation to serve those schools. I think that we are looking forward to actually having a presentation on that issue coming up in one of our next couple of meetings. Rich and I have a very informative discussion with those of interest about this process. Is there any other new business or any other business come before the committee? Not seeing any hands in the room. I'm sorry.
Question, Mr. Chairman. We used to have a member's interest. Am I like, did I know? Okay, so I just wasn't listening.
No, you're right.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I did have something I wanted to just briefly touch on before we wrap up.
Go ahead.
So something I want to bring to the committee's attention, and I'm just trying to pull up the exact name. I'm one of these nerds that frequents the forums over on aaroads.com, where they talk about all kinds of interesting topics around the country. And something that I didn't know was happening in Florida, I guess it's happening in the Orlando area and a few other places, is something that's called an echelon intersection. And Rich, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but basically it's a way of elevating part of an interchange. So if you have a north, south, west, east grid, it elevates, say, the northbound travel lanes and the westbound travel lanes to like almost up on as if it was an overpass, to create this segmented interchange that's supposed to reduce left turn conflicts and other things. This is the first time I've heard of it a few weeks back, reading about this. It hadn't come before this committee, but it's something I'd like to put on the committee's radar, because to me, this just seems like a waste of money boondoggle. This does not, I mean, they argue that it improves pedestrian movements and other things, but you all just want to take a second to go Google what this thing looks like. And I would be scared to see this kind of pop up in some of our urban areas here in Tampa. So it's something I wanted to put on the committee's radar, because I did see that there's one proposed for maybe Orlando, and something that happens in Orlando may end up happening here at some point. So that was all I wanted to bring through. What was it called? Called an echelon, ECHELON. Let me see if I can use my laptop to pull up. It may be difficult to see given, given that my internet is working slow and given that.
Yeah.
Chairman?
I don't know if you guys can see that at all. Probably not.
Yeah, we can.
But it's a grade elevated where half of the intersection is elevated up above and half below, almost like an SPUI, like half of an SPUI in a sense. And it's something that I didn't even know existed, but apparently this is a new technique that many departments of transportation are using. And I saw one was coming to Orlando, so something to put on committee's radar for future years, because I suspect we may see one. And similar to the, like we didn't have a DDI or a DDI here, double diamond interchange for many years, and now there's several going in the area. So something to keep on the committee's radar.
Thank you, Art. Anything else coming before the committee? Yes, Amy.
Yes, I have two things. One is, can't remember if it's Viewpoint or Richmond. We were talking about protected bicycle lanes in the last meeting, and I'd like to inquire about rumble strips, because the context of the answer given was that it is expensive to have raised curbs to protect pedestrians. And so my question is are we even considering like rumble strips so that when people are driving and they go over into that bike lane, they're at least alerted that they're in a bike lane? So that's one. The other one is, I don't know if it was last year, but I brought up the fact that birth dates are included in applications. And, mine was found online and pointed out. And so I had asked that specific data to be removed from public information. And I saw a birth date on this application. So I was wondering if we can make the birth date a little bit more private, so it's not maybe the exact day, it could be here. And that's all I have.
Someone referred to leaving the year. Anything else to come before the committee? I've been asked to ask you if you would use the wipes that are on the table to wipe down your keyboards before you leave in the interest of safety. Thank you all for your patience for the long meeting, from a lot of ground. Hopefully we can work on the something here in this room. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
New Year.